Chapter 317. The experience of someone else's fingers lingering on her lips. Fujio had never experienced it before. That was why she was a little stunned. Chinmo's eyes were very dark, and it was an extremely deep darkness. Very seductive. The softness between his fingers was something he had never felt before. The friction was like the prelude to a passionate kiss. The people standing at the side were all dumbfounded. At that moment, even the sound of the noisy music in his ears had faded quite a bit. Those beauties thought that this scene would end with a fierce kiss. They were even prepared to take a deep breath. Unexpectedly, in the next second, the youngster laughed. She leaned forward, and her face was very close to Chinmo. Brother Imo, I'm the one who protected you. Even if you want to kiss me, I should be the one to take the initiative. After saying that, Fujio stood up handsomely. With one hand on the sofa, she bent down and looked at Chinmo from the side with a very beautiful posture. Her thin lips kissed the left side of Chinmo's face near his chin. Chinmo's pupils dilated, and he frowned subconsciously. That wasn't a kiss at all. It was more like some rich young master flirting with a beauty. Then there was a faint, proud smile. Looking at the youngster's face, Chinmo's eyes deepened. Even though the action of his thin lips brushing across his cheek was too rough, he could still feel what it felt like. It was like being caressed by a feather. Very light, very numb, but Fujio was really happy this time. Even the Almighty's expression was different. It was obvious that he didn't expect such an action from her. But in that situation, a person like the Almighty who didn't care about what others thought of him, might get so angry that he would kiss her. Flirting back like this was the best way to deal with it. And messing around between brothers shouldn't be a big deal. At most, the Almighty would activate his freezing skill again, and she would be the one to take the knife. But looking at the Almighty's expression, he could kiss her at any time to teach her a lesson. She had better get away first. Fujio thought about it and was about to lift her head to retreat. She didn't know why, but her wrist was suddenly pulled back by the Almighty. The Almighty's expression wasn't quite the same as usual. He didn't have the usual gentleness, but his handsome face was dark and fierce. What was going on? Fujio didn't have time to react. A loud clang was heard. Something hit Chinmo's back and head. That noise made Fujio's eyes widen. Chinmo lowered his lids and turned his body sideways. His arm was behind her, protecting her on the sofa. The man's black hair was already wet, and he didn't have his usual business aura. Fujio could clearly see his drooping eyelashes, which were evil and wild. That kind of environment didn't make him look the least bit disheveled. On the contrary, when he lowered his head, it gave Fujio a thrilling illusion. Fujio didn't have much reaction. She saw that the big man behind Chinmo was still holding a wine bottle. Her eyes, which were originally harmless in front of Chinmo, suddenly darkened. It was completely dark. This was the real her. The back of Chinmo's head wasn't bleeding, but at that moment he hadn't held onto the youngster. After the young man got up, without saying a word, he picked up the wine bottle beside him and smashed it at the other party. Chapter 318. This time there was blood. Those guys didn't have time to react at all. Fujio had already kicked one of them to the ground. Her actions were ruthless and her eyes were cold. She only kicked one person and she didn't intend to stop at all. No one expected that the young man could be so ruthless. Junko's face turned pale as she watched from the side. She said to the people next to her, "Why are you still standing there? Hurry up." Those gangsters finally reacted and they were about to rush over. However, before they could get half a meter away from the young man, a strong gust of wind came right at their faces. It was Chinmo. He picked up the wine bottle on the wooden table with his right hand and smashed that guy's head. His skills were even more horrifying than Fujio's. His fingers were stained with blood, but it didn't affect his temperament at all. His perfect abdominal muscles were full of smooth lines. As he waved the wine glass, the onlookers burst into exclamations. If someone was too beautiful even in a fight, then he would be really handsome. Chinmo was such a person. His tall and slender silhouette matched with his deep eyes and calm expression. Those who would fight felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Baka. The people who started the fight cursed in a low voice. Who the hell did Junko mess with this time? Why was he so difficult to deal with? Where was the Chinese soft-footed shrimp? When the pain came, they only felt dizzy for a while. However, the man didn't seem to pay attention to them. Compared to them, he seemed to care more about that silver-haired young man. Those people then noticed that the young man hadn't stopped since the beginning. Was he going to kick Kumamoto to death? Kumamoto was a big guy and he had never been beaten like this before. But now he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Even if he held his head, he couldn't resist the pain. It was too ruthless. The strength of those kicks on his body. Damn it. His back must have been injured. Stop, stop. Kumamoto was in so much pain that he almost begged. But Fujio only curled up her lips and kicked him again. Then she bent down in a very handsome posture, lifted Kumamoto up and gave him a heavy punch. Stop? Are you dreaming? Fujio had to admit that she couldn't control herself. That was because she had never expected the Almighty to be injured. Moreover, he was injured because of her. This could not be tolerated in any way. Which hand did you use to hold the glass just now? Fujio looked at the man who was beaten to the ground by her. Her eyes wandered and she looked like a devil that walked out of a comic book. She asked in a low voice as if there was no one else around, "Is it this one?" As she spoke, she looked at the Kumamoto's right hand. Or this one. Oh, of course I can also break your back. After all, you hit my brother's back, right? When Fujio said this, her murderous aura was really strong. He wasn't the kind of person who could be easily bluffed. Instead, it was a genuine killing intent. At that moment, Kumamoto thought he was going to die. Fujio smiled and lifted her long legs again. But at that moment, an arm stretched out towards Fujio. Chapter 319. He pulled her back, covered her eyes with one hand, and pulled her into a slightly cold embrace. When the faint smell of tobacco came, the thick smell of blood in her nostrils lessened a lot. Perhaps no one expected that it would be Chinemo who stopped Fujio at this time. The man stood tall and slender, with long legs and a handsome face. His pure white shirt was stained with blood, but even so, it couldn't hide his natural aura. He was different from everyone else. If one had to describe him, it would be like a well-polished jade, completely untouchable. Especially when he covered the young man's eyes, that low and deep voice was even more so. Do you want to kill him? Then close your eyes. It's inflamed, so it's better not to see so much blood. Hearing that, Fujio's back stiffened and she didn't move again. She knew that the Almighty was telling her to calm down. Fujio did calm down. Her long legs touched the ground and she didn't kick again. She seemed to have returned to normal. After all, the Almighty had an aura that made people feel at ease. That aura wasn't completely gentle. There were too many things that couldn't be put into words. But those people next to him thought that this was their chance, and they wanted to take this opportunity to sneak up on Chinemo. Chinemo was never a person to be trifled with. He pulled the youngster with one hand, raised his long legs and kicked those people to the ground. One after another. That movement was accompanied by the wind, and it carried a sense of dominance. No one dared to take another step forward. Especially when one of them was beaten half to death. They didn't dare to be rash anymore. Fujio's eyes were covered by the Almighty the whole time. She didn't see anything, but she could hear the sounds one after another. The table was completely broken. And the floor was full of glass. When the Almighty moved his hand away, someone fell to the ground and someone was running away in panic. Junko's face was deathly pale. Seeing Fujio look at her, she shivered slightly and ran away quickly. It was too scary. Both the youngster who kept kicking people and the man who beat them couldn't get close to them. These two people were too scary. Fujio only had time to see the Almighty throw the youngster to the ground with one hand. Was this person like this even in a fight? Even if he was covered in blood, he would still give people a kind of orderly charisma? Inexplicably, Fujio felt like she had seen such skills somewhere before. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, an extremely familiar scene flashed before his eyes. Fujio felt her heart skip a beat. He didn't even bother with the escaping Junko. Instead, she glanced up at Chinemo. It was unlikely. The Almighty probably hasn't been to the Fifth Avenue, however, who could say for sure? After all, their skills were so similar. If Fujio hadn't seen it again, she would have forgotten about it. Just 3 years ago she was almost caught by someone. She couldn't see what that person looked like because the light was too strong and blurred her vision. After she finished the last case, she thought she was safe. She blended into the crowd, changed her clothes and even put on a wig just like every girl going to a masquerade party. She held a purse in her hand and wore a black robe with a hat. She had a faint smile on her face and left the policeman behind beautifully. Chapter 320. The delivery truck that had been parked in front of the ball suddenly turned on its headlights. All of the light beams were like radars, all locked onto her. Just then, a person jumped out of the truck. His movements were very handsome and neat. He didn't look like a regular customer that she had met before. The person stood with his back to the light. Other than the school uniform he was wearing, she could roughly tell his age. There was nothing else. The lights were so bright that she couldn't see anything from her position. He stood there with one hand in his pocket, his voice calm. I've heard a lot about you, 0Z. At that time she didn't expect anyone to recognize her. Fortunately, she was wearing a long black robe, dressed as a comic villain, the Grim Reaper. The large black hat on the robe gave her a good cover. So much so that no one could see her real face, let alone see her expression. The police officers rushed out from behind the man. She heard some people asking in disbelief, "Are you sure it's her? She's a lady." "Who told you that Z is a guy?" "That person is a high school student, but in front of the police he seems to be in control of the situation." But the information we received." The police wanted to say something, but the person laughed. The man chuckled. "Yes, it was your accurate intelligence that allowed Zero to roam freely for half a year." The police. Why was this Chinese person hired by F so difficult to communicate with? Was he bullying them because they didn't know how to speak? If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, she would have liked to give that person a thumbs up. Because she could clearly hear the police gnashing their teeth after the man finished speaking. However, that person was here to capture him. That was another matter altogether. She was very clear about the principle of distinguishing between friend and foe. Although she admired the other party's intelligence. Using that kind of intelligence on her was a little tricky. She had never met such a difficult opponent. The moment he appeared, he intercepted her, and she didn't know when this person had come to the Fifth Avenue. However, this was the Five Great Ways after all. It was her territory. How could she let an outsider capture her just like that? It had always been her style of doing things to keep a hand in everything. She did not raise her head. Instead, she smiled and raised her right hand. "Smith, you should recognize this." Smith was the person in charge of Fifth Avenue. When he saw what Z was holding, his expression changed. "Bomb time bomb." She smiled faintly. "That's right, it's a time bomb. How about this, since you've caught me, I'll give you a chance. This time bomb is nearby. Do you want to catch me or dismantle it? Choose one." Smith gritted his teeth. It was obvious that the safety of the personnel was the most important. "Don't listen to her. There's no bomb." That man was surprisingly calm. Her heart skipped a beat. If the police didn't fall into her trap, she wouldn't be able to get away. The man looked at her, his face blurred by the light. Chapter 321. Cold sweat broke out on Smith's forehead when he heard Z's words. It was true. Z's style of doing things was to leave a warning every time. She would also use many online platforms to tell everyone why she was doing this. Those people were all guilty of heinous crimes. But even so, doing this would be challenging their authority. So he had to catch Z. And capture her alive. What should we do? Smith couldn't make up his mind. The person was insistent. She wouldn't plant a bomb here. All the records show that Z wouldn't hurt ordinary people during her operations. This time will be no exception. She's playing psychological warfare with you. Smith was in a dilemma. Although the person she hired was a psychologist. What if Z really planted a bomb here? There were so many people on Fifth Avenue. If there was an explosion, it would be over. Z was really cunning. Every time she would blend in with the crowd and pick the most crowded places to attack. Since Mr. Smith is having a hard time deciding, I'll do something small for you to see. She knew that Hoshino was ready. She moved her finger. Bang. The sound of an explosion came from not far away. Smith's expression changed. He shouted, "Stop. Z, stop it right now. Don't be nervous. This is only the first one. There are 7 or 8 others buried nearby. Mr. Smith, I just said that you have to make a choice. Also, if you shoot randomly, you will hit a bomb. F***CKU. Smith thought of this sentence in Wuxia at that moment. He was really annoying. At that time, when she saw Smith's expression, she knew that she was about to succeed. So, she calmly put her hand behind her back and touched the magnet that was stuck to her back. How could she not have some escape tools when she was in this world? As expected, Smith's face turned green when he heard her words. He shouted, "Don't shoot." The sound of an explosion could cause panic. The crowd was no longer as calm as before. Once they heard that there were more bombs, they started to panic and wanted to escape. Taking advantage of that moment, she forcefully tore it apart. The powerful suction from the iron-sucking device caused her to fall back dozens of meters effortlessly. Her entire body was directly glued to the celebratory iron horse. It would be a lie to say that it didn't hurt, but the most important thing was to escape. Because it was obvious that the person had his eyes on her when she retreated. It was precisely because his movements were too methodical that she remembered this moment. If it weren't for her escape, he would have grabbed onto her hand with one move. In fact, at that time he did grab her long sleeve, but the fabric was too fragile and broke. But even so, she, who had never shown her face in front of others, revealed a flaw. That was her long hair, which was exposed outside. She couldn't care less. In the midst of the chaos, she heard the police say, F***CK. Z tricked him again. There was no bomb. They were firecrackers. The sound just now was from firecrackers. At that time she thought that there would be a lot of trouble. She didn't expect that after she came out for more than 10 days, that person had already disappeared from the fifth path. That person's identity was also quite mysterious. The reason why she called him mysterious was because even she had not found out who that person was. The only thing he knew was that the man was from Wuxia just like him. Fujio raised her eyes again and looked at Chinemo, whose white shirt was still stained with blood. Chapter 322. Chinemo looked down and saw that the young man was looking at him. He didn't know what he was thinking, but his eyes were a little numb. He thought for a moment. The kid was probably scared. That's right, the Almighty thought that his little brother was scared. Maybe it was a natural protective mentality. Chinemo had automatically ignored how ruthless Fujio was when she kicked him just now. Anyway, the young man looked dazed and there was still a little blood on his face. He was no different from a broken kid. Although he was still too handsome. But he was still dazed. Chinmo's eyes couldn't help but warm up when he thought of this. He took out his wallet and put the compensation amount on the bar counter. Because the compensation amount was too much, the hotel bodyguards who rushed over didn't know what to do next. After all, the things on the ground weren't worth that much money. Chinemo grabbed Fujio and walked through the noisy crowd as if there was no one else around. The lights above his head were still flashing, and the music was the kind that could make one's heart race. If it was someone else wearing a white shirt in a nightclub, you would think that he was conservative. But that person was the Almighty and everything seemed very different. Not only was he untainted by the mud, but he also had that kind of abstinence and indifference, like a god who had fallen from heaven. The youth he was holding in his hand was extremely demonic. With a black leather jacket and silver hair, he was simply an illusion of a demon. Both of them were so good-looking, but their temperaments were different. One black and one white, which created such an impactful scene. The Fujoshis in the crowd felt their hearts racing. This kind of hand-holding was so sweet. Oh, they didn't know why this man was so domineering. What did he want to do with the young man? But the fight just now was so cool. So cool that even now, when they saw Chinmo's side profile, they couldn't believe that there was such a perfect man in the world. Hearing the gasps around her, Fujio curled up her lips. It was quite interesting to be with the Almighty. Even the fight was so fun. The bodyguards didn't stop them. And there were still broken wine bottles on the ground behind them. The Almighty must have been a person who liked to pick fights in nightclubs in the past. Fujio was wrong about this. Chinemo never picked fights in Jianghu City. Who would be stupid enough to pick a fight with the young master of the Qin family? Unless he wanted to die. Chinemo also went to nightclubs because it was hard for him to fall asleep. None of the young masters from the military region dared to provoke them. Especially since everyone knew that Chinemo didn't like people touching him. Therefore he didn't even dare to arrange a girl for him. It wasn't like they hadn't made arrangements before. Chinemo took a puff of his cigarette and told them to go where they should go. That was the most chaotic year in Chinmo's life, but he didn't do anything out of line. Therefore many people thought that young Master Qin liked men, so they kept sending young men to the private room. Chinemo laughed. He swirled the wine in his hand, exuding an aura of gentleness. I'm a man with a handle. You want me to touch a man with a handle? I don't have that hobby. Get lost. This was what he said to the young masters in the military compound. Then he stood up and buttoned his shirt. He was the cold and inviolable young Master Qin again. It seemed like a joke, but it was filled with warning. Ever since then, no one dared to mess with Chinemo anymore. Chapter 323. She didn't expect the Almighty to take her to the corner of the wall. He looked back and said calmly, "Are you still afraid?" "Afraid? Afraid?" Fujio didn't react for a moment. But then she remembered her stupid performance just now. She immediately followed the Almighty's words and said, "I didn't feel anything when I kicked him, but I was a bit stunned when I saw so much blood." Chinemo stopped in his tracks and turned to look at her. The two of them were very close, so close that it seemed like the Almighty's breath could hit her face. Just when Fujio thought the Almighty had seen through her lie, she saw the man raise his hand and wipe her face. His expression was still very indifferent, like a big brother. So don't look at the blood, the eye drops are wasted. Fujio. Is that the logic? But whatever the Almighty said, it was true. Fujio felt lucky that she remembered what happened just now and put on that expression. Otherwise, someone as smart as the Almighty would have treated her in a different way. After returning to the room, the Almighty really gave her another eye drop. Although the pain this time wasn't as strong as before, it was still a little painful. The difference was that after giving her the eye drop, the Almighty directly turned off the light and went back to his own bed. Don't ask why, she could still hear the sound with her eyes closed. There was always a question in her heart. According to Fujio's personality, she would definitely solve it. But it wasn't realistic to directly ask, "Brother Imo, have you been to the Fifth Avenue?" If he wasn't careful, the Almighty might notice something and expose himself. So how to ask was a skill. But, since she was already living as Fujio, let bygones be bygones. At least let bygones be bygones. Because now, she had found something that was far more important than catching those who had committed the most heinous crimes, something that she should persist in. It was to let He Honghua enjoy life, be friendly to her friends, fight alongside the Almighty, and participate in the national competition. She didn't know who said it. In this world there was no end to catching evil. Just like when there was light there would be shadows. When we are cruel to others, it must be to protect the people important to us. If not, stealing, insulting, nitpicking and playing tricks. The darkness that was slowly evolving would eventually become a devil. She had encountered too many cases in her past life. Do not judge the sinner by his sex, nor by his age. Even high school students could laugh proudly after bullying others in school. Even a middle school student could pretend to be pitiful after stealing something. Not to mention some adults. However, the truth is always tiring or nauseating. When you look into the abyss is watching you. This sentence was always so reasonable. In the past, Hoshino had been worried about her for a long time. He was worried that she would not be able to control herself and use other means to punish those criminals. In fact, even Fujio herself was afraid that she would become unscrupulous and get rid of whoever she wanted. Just like how she was today. It was very savage. The Almighty was really someone who knew how to stop her. Chapter 324. If the Almighty was really that person, that was even less of a problem. Because in that person's eyes, she had always been a woman. And now she was a boy. Fujio thought about it and lay down on the bed. So, if we follow this equation then, Fujio's identity gave her great protection. She couldn't let the Almighty know that she was a girl. If the Almighty was really that person, with that person's style of doing things, he would definitely have checked on her once. Thinking about it this way, it seemed to explain why the Almighty wanted to catch her after seeing her in the game and knowing that she was a hacker. Was it just because she knew how to play games? Fujio put a question mark in her head. What if it wasn't because she was playing games, but because the Almighty suspected that she was Z? That would explain why the Almighty always set traps for her when he was talking to her. And he always looked like he was watching over her. He probably found out that Fujio hadn't been to Fifth Avenue 3 years ago, and she was still a middle school student at that time, so it was even more impossible for her to be Z. That was why being a high school student was such a good identity. The more Fujio thought about it, the more her lips curled up. Chin-Imo, who was lying on the other bed, didn't hear any movement. He sat up with his long legs on the ground and said in a calm voice, "Are you still afraid?" Fujio heard Chin-Mo's question and knew that the Almighty seemed to have misunderstood something. But at this time, if she said she wasn't afraid, she would really give herself away. She could only reply, "A little, there's always blood in front of me." She didn't like blood, and when she realized it, she realized that she had used too much strength. Fujio couldn't even imagine what would have happened if the Almighty hadn't pulled her into his arms in time and covered her eyes. Would she have crushed that person's internal organs? Fujio shook her head as if she wanted to get rid of these emotions. It was indeed a serious matter. Who knew that the Almighty's next words would be, "If you're afraid, come and sleep"? Fujio was shocked. He wasn't stunned by those words. It was the Almighty's tone that said, "Because you are my little brother, I will indulge you. No one else should even think about touching my bedding." Fujio shook her head decisively. "Brother Imo, I don't sleep well. That's all. It's fine as long as I know Brother Imo is beside me." Sleep over there? What a joke. Wasn't this asking her to walk right into a trap? But the Almighty must be coaxing her like a child again. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked her to go over and sleep with him. Unfortunately, at this moment, Qin Imo saw the youngster as a rebellious boy trying to be brave. Qin Imo wanted to leave the youngster some self-respect, so he turned to turn on the table lamp. Fujio couldn't open her eyes at this time, but she could still feel the gentle light. It was so strange that there was such a man in the world. Cold as ice, black-bellied, but gentle to the bone. The premise is you have to be his younger brother. When Fujio thought of this, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The more it was like this, the more likely the Almighty would retaliate after finding out her secret. So, let's hurry up and finish the training. Chapter 325. The next day. The sky wasn't completely bright yet. Fujio stood in the bathroom and began to check if there was anything wrong with her. After yesterday, she became more vigilant. The door must be locked. In front of the mirror, she wrapped the bandages and put on her sweater and coat. After washing her hair, it looked even fluffier. When she opened the door, she could see the Almighty's peaceful sleeping face. His hands were on his chest, and when his eyelashes fell, she could see circles and circles of shadows. He looked like a mixed-blood aristocrat. Who did the Almighty look like this? His genes were so good. Forget it. While the Almighty was sleeping, she would take the phone and look at it for a while. She hadn't replied to Baby Feng's WeChat message from yesterday. But she didn't expect that when she got the phone, it wasn't Baby Feng's urgent call on the screen. It was his brother, Manager Feng. Manager Feng was very direct. Go on Weibo and post photos. Don't be like CEO Qin. That guy's Weibo is full of weeds. Fujio thought about it and replied, I don't like to post on Weibo, but I can do it for the Almighty. What do you think? Manager Feng was still at the domestic airport, planning to fly to Tokyo. After dealing with the business in Jianghu City, of course he had to go to Tokyo. This was a friendly match. Although it was a friendly match, once the country collapsed, its meaning changed completely. If they lost here, how could they have the face to attend the national competition? Manager Feng was only thinking about this, but when he saw the WeChat message, he immediately became excited. Do it for CEO Qin? Are you sure? Yes, I have the Almighty's password before. Isn't it just the same password as the game? Fujio lay back on the bed lazily with a lollipop in her mouth and a phone in her hand. Only then did she feel alive and her interest was aroused. Manager Feng thought about it. With CEO Qin's indulgence of Spade, it shouldn't be a problem to post on Weibo, so he agreed without hesitation. Then post it with photos. Fujio smiled lightly and replied, no problem. Even if she wanted to post photos, she also needed to post photos. The Almighty probably didn't like to show his face in public, but it would be a pity if Qin Mo's fans didn't enjoy the benefits of such a gorgeous sleeping face. Therefore, after Fujio got out of bed, she tilted her body and took the photo from the right to the left. She used the morning light to blur Qin Mo's handsome side profile, leaving only a smooth curve that made people think of how handsome the person in the photo was just by looking at it. Of course, there was also that handsome and dignified sleeping posture. The Almighty was too clean. It was as if he had fused with the light of dawn. Fujio's smiling eyes froze for a moment when she saw the photo she had taken. There was no need to ask any more. She was almost certain. The Almighty was that person from back then? Because the curve of his chin was highly similar to the memory from 3 years ago. He couldn't see the person's face clearly, so he had once asked who this person was. He immediately had the answer. However, Fujio only paused for a moment. Since they had already figured it out yesterday, there was no need to be conflicted now. And one thing was, she recognized the Almighty. The Almighty didn't recognize her, which was good. Chapter 326. At this time, she had to thank Manager Feng for the follow-up measures that Almighty Qin didn't remember the password for his official Weibo account. Manager Feng changed Almighty Qin's official Weibo password to the game password. That was why Fujio came up so smoothly. Of course, she had another way. As long as she took Almighty Qin's laptop, she would be able to find the preview record and use it as a starting point to crack the password. However, now that she knew that the Almighty was the person who had made her suffer a loss before, she didn't know what to do. Of course, Fujio wouldn't leave any traces behind. The Almighty was so smart. He had to be on guard. But such a picture was taken. All the Qin fans exploded. Holy sh*T, what did I just see? What did I see? Early in the morning, I'm just checking in as usual and watering Almighty Qin's Weibo. I never expected Almighty Qin to post on Weibo, but what is this? Photos? Sleeping photos? I must be dreaming. This is the first time I've seen Almighty Qin's selfie. Oh, he's so handsome that I'm crying. Why does Almighty Qin look so inviolable even when he's asleep? I'm turning gay. The man upstairs is crazy. Count me in, I want to be gay too. Mom, my nose is bleeding. It was not only Qin fans who felt this way. Even the team members who had woken up early were stunned. One of them posted, "Captain, what's wrong with you?" Captain. Terror. Lin Feng scrolled through Weibo while shouting towards the bathroom, "Yunhu, come out and take a look. Did Captain suffer a shock?" Yunhu walked over, his upper body naked and his lower body in a pair of black pants. His manly abs were on full display, still damp. "What's wrong? Look at this photo." Lin Feng raised his phone for Yunhu to take a look while he was jealous of his figure. Yunhu glanced up and paused. "Captain, send a photo? On Weibo? Or was it a sleeping photo?" *CK. Is Supreme Alliance finally using Qin Mo's beauty to fight for territory with us? This was forwarded by Hei Qi, one of the top 3 in the country. Unforgivable. Why does this have to be a world where looks are the most important? Unfair. This is really unfair. Hei Qi, also known as Fatty Hei. Seeing him speak, the crowd was amused. A clever netizen commented, "Be a good boy, Fatty. Don't mess around. You're even worse off when it comes to your figure." The dark-skinned Fatty looked at his own fat arms and his bulging beer belly, then looked at the man in the photo who could almost be photographed in a magazine. He instantly felt as if he had been dealt 10,000 blows. "Haha, big Fatty, don't be sad. Come and cry on Uncle's shoulder." Coco had always loved to play online. As soon as he heard that his captain had posted a photo on Weibo, he immediately rushed over to join in the fun. Black Fatty. Go to hell. Of course, apart from these, there was also a post that caused quite a stir. Because the person who forwarded the message was none other than Xiao Jing, the captain of the national champion team. His message was very much in line with his taciturn character. There was only a question mark. By the way, there was also Meng on Weibo. Seeing Xiao Jing's Weibo post, Qin Mo and Xiao Jing became even more excited. "Almighty Xiao, just admit it. Do you only care about Almighty Qin?" "I couldn't help it when I saw Almighty Qin's photo of him sleeping. Not bad, this is very Almighty Xiao." Chapter 327. Yes, who took the photo? This angle, this lighting, they knew Almighty Qin didn't like to show his face, so they deliberately blurred Almighty Qin's face, leaving only that graceful arc in Almighty Qin's unique noble temperament. The appearance of such a magnificent sleeping face was so sudden that Qin Mo's fans were so excited that they forgot the most important question. Now they were reminded of it. Another wave of heated discussion came. As an 18-year-old selfie lover, I can responsibly tell the beauties that this angle is impossible to take a selfie, and the selfie stick is useless, unless it's with the help of other external forces. I think even if Almighty Qin took a selfie, he wouldn't use a selfie stick. Let me summarize what the 2 floors above said. The photo was definitely taken by someone else. So, who is this someone else? From the photo, Almighty Qin probably hasn't woken up yet. Who could be next to Almighty Qin when he was sleeping? I have something to report. Isn't the Supreme Alliance training in Tokyo now? It's said that 2 people share a room, you know. According to Almighty Qin's personality, he would definitely live alone. Our Almighty Qin is very obsessed with cleanliness, everyone knows that. Maybe it's Manager Feng, that's the only answer I can think of. I don't think it's right. Would Almighty Qin open the door and let Manager Feng take a photo of his sleeping face? Almighty Qin would only smile at Manager Feng and ask him to leave, so this answer doesn't make sense. That's right. This was the reaction their captain would have. In front of their captain, Manager Feng's foxtail was especially restrained, probably because he knew he couldn't beat the captain. So what was going on? As an internal member of the Supreme Alliance, Lin Feng also couldn't figure out who took this photo at this time. According to yesterday's room allocation, the captain did sleep alone. At this time, 8:20 in the morning, no one would dare to enter the captain's room, right? Only student Feng in the suite guessed the answer after seeing the Weibo post. The person who took this photo was very likely his idol. What? Why did Almighty Qin become the protagonist of everything he imagined? In his fantasy, he woke up with his idol, took a photo with him while washing his face and posted it on Weibo. His brother's mission was to post a Weibo post every day after becoming a professional player to gain popularity. In the end, student Feng felt wronged and needed to calm down. On the other side, after Fujio posted on Weibo, She logged out and sent an OK gesture to Manager Feng. Manager Feng also saw the photo, but he didn't reply. Instead, he silently looked up at the sky covered by the haze outside Jianghu City Airport. This has nothing to do with him. He was a man about to get on a plane. Oh, little Spade, good luck. Seeing that Manager Feng didn't reply to her message, Fujio thought that he had boarded the plane, so she didn't care. She got up, took a lollipop from the bedside table and put it in her mouth. She heard that there was a mobile version of the hero. She could download it on her phone and register to level up. However, at this time the fans on Weibo had all turned into all-round detectives. Even some of the members of the other battle teams couldn't help but send private messages to Lin Feng. Chapter 328. At this moment, Jianghu glanced at the photo on Weibo again. He took a sip of mineral water. I can roughly guess who it is. You can guess. Lin Feng jumped up in excitement, grabbing onto Jianghu's arm. Who is it? Who is it? Jianghu glanced down at his fair collarbone, frowning. Then he enlarged the photo. Take your time, there's a bright spot. Since you already know, why didn't you tell me directly? Lin Feng wanted to pull his hair again. Jianghu pulled his shirt over his head. Because I wanted to use this chance to train your slow reflexes. I can give you a hint, Captain might not have slept alone last night. When Lin Feng heard this, he knew it was impossible to get an answer from Jianghu. But Captain didn't sleep alone? So exciting. What's the bright spot? Lin Feng caressed his chin, his big round eyes looking at the photo on Weibo. Why couldn't he see any bright spot? The brightest spot was the Captain himself. Even though his face wasn't very clear, it was especially well defined under the light. That faint shadow was like an angel whose wings had been broken and was lying in the holy light, dazzling everyone's eyes. Who could see anything else? But once intelligence was involved, it was a huge problem. Lin Feng lowered his head, staring at the photo carefully. Still nothing. But even if he couldn't see it, it didn't mean that the smart MO and GeoCP fans couldn't see it. Of course, there were some smart old Qin fans who weren't CP fans. Beauties, look carefully, don't you think this photo is weird? What's weird? Cut off the picture, the arrow points to the lollipop, black ring and some eye drops on the bedside table. Let's not talk about the latter, just the lollipop and black ring. The Almighty never wears a ring. Fine, let's just say the Almighty bought one for himself when he went to Tokyo. Let's have a good half-cent lollipop. The Almighty doesn't like sweets, much less eating lollipops. Who do you think the lollipop belongs to? Someone with a tacit understanding passing by. Single dogs are fed another bowl of dog food. They don't want to talk about it so early in the morning. When they go to work, they have the same tacit understanding. Wait a minute, brothers and sisters above, why don't I understand? What do you mean? It's obvious who the lollipop belongs to. Last night, that person slept in the same room as Almighty Qin. Today, the person who took the photo is, you know. As a fan of Big Spade, I understand. Super +1. My Big Spade is being naughty again, the candy caught me off guard. Some of the younger fans still didn't understand. They still thought that Almighty Qin had shot it himself, and that he shouldn't be implicating others. Some Spade Z fans are too much. Do they have to link our Almighty Qin and Spade Z together? In fact, the first person to come up with this theory wasn't a Spade fan, but an old Qin fan. It was obvious that their Almighty had slept with Spade Z. What else was there to say? After all, they were all people who truly liked Almighty Qin and didn't want to cause trouble for him, so they ignored him. Chapter 329. Spade's fans felt uncomfortable when they saw this sentence, but after the last online incident, they calmed down a lot. Their first reaction wasn't to retort, but to ask their big sister. Sister Turtle, what should we do? Almighty Qin's fans are saying that we are binding Almighty Qin. Sister Turtle was the rational fan from before, so she said very decisively, don't do anything. After this incident, you can see that Big Spade and Almighty Qin have a very good relationship, and Almighty Qin is also very protective of Big Spade. Since this is the case, don't let some people and some words affect their relationship. I believe everyone knows who took this photo today. Today Big Spade is giving us sweets. Since he is giving sweets, we should also be happy. Don't pay attention to this kind of person who obviously wants attention. This topic will destroy the relationship between Big Spade and Almighty Qin. Why don't we queue up and tag Big Spade and tease him? If Manager Feng, who was sitting on the plane, knew this was how things were handled, he would definitely give Sister Turtle a thumbs up. She was so prescient. Most of Spade's fans responded to the call, and only a few of them still said something that could easily cause disputes. The funniest thing was this scene. A self-proclaimed Spade fan came out and said, "Sorry, my big Spade definitely didn't think so much. Now I also realize that I have caused trouble for Chin's fans. I will explain to Spade's fans later." That person quickly replied to this Spade fan, "It's okay dear as long as you understand moi." Spade's fans were burning with rage. What was going on? What did my big Spade do to deserve an apology? That person was obviously a schemer. He was young but he had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. I was a little rude just now, but let me say this first, I also like Big Spade, but some things shouldn't always be linked together. Yes, you are right. Sister Turtle saw that some people who liked Big Spade had become the other party's accomplices, so she stopped the meeting and went directly to Weibo to shout. Didn't they say that the photo was not sent by their Big Spade? When Sister Turtle reposted Qin Mo's Weibo post, she tagged Spade Z. She wrote, "Big Spade, next time you take a photo remember to cover up. Look at you, you forgot to take your ring and lollipop. Don't leave too obvious traces." As soon as she saw this comment, the poster understood why everyone said it was Spade Z who took the photo of their almighty Qin. But since she had already said it, she could only pretend she didn't see anything. Anyway, she had already gotten the attention. The 2 or 3 little Spade fans were still confused, replying to her, "I'm sorry, I thought there was something wrong with you just now. Now I'll clarify with them, you're in the wrong, sorry. Thank you for clarifying the matter. As a Spade fan, I might have misunderstood you. I'm also a fan of Spade Z. I couldn't accept what you said at first, but after seeing this post, I feel that Almighty is quite righteous." Sister Turtle really wanted to ask them, what exactly did that person clarify? Where was the integrity? But she resisted. In the past, when she was writing for a website, she had encountered the same thing. Sometimes being strong didn't mean being invincible. There were many people who had thoughts that you couldn't see through. Chapter 330. Originally, she thought that her understanding would backfire. Because in this world, there would always be people who would believe some disguised words. Her Big Spade wasn't a person who could disguise, but the other party was. So she wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Especially when it came to protecting Spade Z. She had to be calmer and win with experience. Fortunately, she wasn't fighting alone. As soon as her it came out, a lot of people reposted her, including those who really liked Spade Z and only focused on the passion that Spade Z brought them. They used that S one after another to prove their strong and powerful existence. My Big Spade did it on purpose. Such a domineering attack would definitely leave evidence that he and Almighty Qin are sleeping together. Are you sure? Almighty Qin won't do it. I'll just wait for Almighty Qin to wake up and check Weibo. Yes, according to Almighty Qin's character, there will be 2 endings. One is to block Big Spade, the other is to sleep with Big Spade. Just like that, the scene changed again. An aura full of love spread out. That person is still posting to make his presence known? Sorry, people who really liked Spade Z wouldn't have any interaction with you. If you want to gain popularity, you can feel it yourself with a look. Lin Feng was still moved and frightened by Little Spade's success in sleeping with Captain. He turned his head and said to Yunhu, "That's not right, it was Little Feng Shang who slept with Little Spade. How did he change to Captain? Do you think there was nothing between them last night?" According to Little Spade's character, he would definitely. Even if Little Spade had ulterior motives towards Captain, it wouldn't be a big deal. Obviously, there will be 2 situations. One is that he was beaten up by Captain and thrown out, and the other is that the person who was slept with was him, not Captain. Yunhu was indeed the best player in Supreme Alliance other than the Almighty. He hit the nail on the head with one sentence. But Little Spade is really charming, I can see that someone is protecting him. Protecting? You mean those at S from Spade fans? Lin Feng wasn't stupid. They have a good grasp of the wind direction, otherwise someone would take the opportunity to rise. After saying this, Lin Feng became excited again. Little Spade is indeed a fresh stream in our Supreme Alliance. He dared to take a photo of Captain and even used Captain's account to post on Weibo. Why could he use the Captain's account to post on Weibo? I'm sure Captain didn't post it himself, but how did Little Spade do it? You hacked Captain's system? I don't think so. Yunhu tapped on the webpage on his phone. Our team's official Weibo isn't active, which means that Feng Yi knows about this. It's very likely that Little Spade got Feng Yi's approval before posting on Weibo. Otherwise, do you think Manager Feng, who values money as much as his life, wouldn't repost such an interactive photo? He's running away, and if the captain finds out, he'll be held responsible. That makes sense. Lin Feng slapped his forehead. Ayaya, isn't little Spade in trouble? I wonder how Captain will punish him. I really want to see. Achoo. Fujio logged out of Hero's page and logged back into the official Weibo account. Her slender fingers rubbed her nose carelessly, and her eyes paused. She was about to look at the comments that had been at. She heard a low chuckle coming from her left side. Why are you sneezing all of a sudden? Chapter 331. As soon as Fujio turned around, she was met with a pair of deep eyes, which inexplicably gave off a hazy and inviolable feeling. Did you catch a cold yesterday, or are you feeling unwell? The Almighty was still lying on the bed, the pillow pressed against his ear. His features were as handsome as a comic book, and a few strands of black hair fell on his forehead, the ends of the hair falling on his eyelashes. Even the smell of the hotel seemed to have sublimated on him. It was light and pleasant to the nose. But it didn't look good for the Almighty to wake up at this time. She had just replied to a post by someone called Sister Turtle, and she was going to check out other ads. Well, actually, it didn't matter what they were. What mattered was her reply. I'm so handsome, of course I'm the main. She had thought that her reply would be buried among all the comments, and the Almighty might not even see it. After all, the Almighty didn't like Weibo, and he definitely wouldn't go to her official Weibo to check the replies one by one. But Fujio's fingers paused, and she naturally moved her phone away. No, I'm fine. Oh. Chinamo looked at her movements and raised his eyebrows. He lifted the quilt with his fingers and walked over slowly. Chinamo wasn't wearing a shirt, so his seductive waistline and well-defined chest were exposed. His mermaid lines could be seen clearly, and he looked very oppressive. Fujio thought that no matter how powerful the Almighty was, he wouldn't notice that she had just sent a reply. But Chinamo bent over, leaned over, and pressed down on Fujio's hand. They were very close, so close that it seemed like he was going to press her down. Secretly playing with your phone while I was sleeping? That voice was really nice, but at this moment, it made her feel that every inch of his breath that hit her ear was dangerous. What did I say? Be obedient. Chinamo freed his other hand and tapped the corner of the youngster's eye. You don't want your eyes anymore, huh? So it was about the eye inflammation. Fujio thought that the Almighty had noticed something. I want them, Brother Imo, but I have to reply to your messages, right? For example, Baby Fong sent me a message yesterday. You know that Baby Fong needs to be taken care of. Manager Fong isn't here, so I have to take care of him. If I don't reply to his WeChat for a whole night, his heart will be fragile. There was a hint of coldness in Chinmo's eyes. You're right. Right? Fujio felt that God was kind to her. She was smart and didn't reveal any flaws when facing the pressure of a god. Fujio didn't reveal any flaws, but she gave such an explanation. Chinamo didn't like it very much. Baby Fong, huh? This form of address was quite intimate. He seemed to be very close to Feng Shang and Shui Yaoyao. At the thought of Shui Yaoyao's existence, he frowned subconsciously. Even the Almighty himself didn't know his expression at that time. Of course I can't let you lose contact with others. Chinmo's voice was calm as he took the phone from Fujio's hand. What do you want to reply to him? I'll help you. Fujio. No matter how smart she was, she wouldn't have expected things to turn out this way. Why did the Almighty never play by the rules? At first, Chinamo really wanted to reply to Feng Shang, but when he took the youngster's phone, he saw an eye-catching Weibo reply on the screen. Chapter 332. That's it. That was the only thought in Fujio's mind. After Chinamo picked up his phone, time seemed to stop between the two of them. It was empty for half a second. Chinamo lowered his eyes and looked at the youngster on the bed. The youngster was looking at him too. That face was still clean and handsome, but no matter how he looked at it, it made people want to teach him a lesson. Attack? You. Chinamo arched a brow, then his thin lips curved into a smile. He remained standing by the bed, but his left hand pressed down, supporting himself on the bed. Fujio could clearly feel that the mattress had sunk a little because of the Almighty's movement. Chinamo bent his waist and put one knee on the mattress. His legs were so long and beautiful. That handsome and noble face pressed down on her without any warning. His eyes were deep and black, like poppies in bloom, with a strong sense of abstinence. The morning sun shone on his deep and straight features, making him look even more oppressive. The two of them were so close that Fujio couldn't move at all. The Almighty was so cunning that he even cut off her escape route. This position made it seem as if her entire body was trapped under him. The light minty smoke that belonged to the man assaulted her from all directions. He just looked at her. That pair of eyes that had always been indifferent seemed to be about to attack at this moment, emitting a dangerous and beautiful luster of a predator. Since you insist on being the attack, I'll have to practice with you. Let's see who's more aggressive, you or me. As Qin Mo said this, he was about to teach this troublemaker brother a lesson. His first reaction was to strip the youngster. Qin Mo's action completely alerted Fujio. Brother Imo, I have something to say about this. Fujio took a step back, but Qin Mo held her wrist. The Almighty didn't care. Oh, you still have something to say? When we play werewolf, everyone who is thrown out has to say something before they die. Fujio looked serious. Qin Mo was interested. He wanted to hear what this naughty kid had to say. He was still talking about werewolf, so he raised his eyebrows at the youngster, signaling him to continue. Anyone who plays hero knows that offense is the best defense. Fujio leaned forward, sat up straight, and kissed him on his right cheek without any warning. Her bright eyes, coupled with her silver hair, looked handsome and devilish. I want to say, Brother Imo, it's so early in the morning. Why would I think that you're interested in me when you're pounding me on the bed like that? Am I supposed to think that you're interested in me too? I can't help but kiss you. Indeed, Qin Mo didn't expect Fujio to make such a move. His fingers paused and his mood sank. His eyes darkened like the water in a deep well. Fujio seized the opportunity to escape from the predicament. She stood with one hand in her pocket and sighed regretfully. Brother Imo, what do you think we should do? Just when I thought I was a little straighter, you turn me gay again. This is not good, not good. At this moment, Qin Mo was so angry that he laughed. His lips curled up faintly. He straightened his body and stepped on the floor barefooted, like a god descending from the heavens. Afterward. Chapter 333. The distance between them was even closer, because both of them were standing. Moreover, Qin Mo grabbed Fujio's collar and dragged her over. Following that strength and posture, Qin Mo lowered his head and leaned forward, his thin lips inching closer to Fujio. The perfect height difference was just like what the Tokyo girls said. If the two of them kissed, the scene would be very beautiful. But Qin Mo was still rational. How could he kiss her? He was just warning his disobedient younger brother. You're so good at talking nonsense. Tell me, how should I teach you a lesson, huh? Brother Imo, do you want to hear the truth? You're the big brother, so you have to let me win. Fujio decided to change tactics. She didn't even try to dodge, and there was a slight smile on her lips. Qin Mo listened to the youngster's rascally tone and laughed instead of getting angry. You like meat? You like to play with your phone? You like to post on Weibo? The last one average. Fujio didn't have a habit of posting on Weibo, but what she said was true. Qin Mo was still holding onto her phone. He moved his fingers, letting her see for herself. Do you like to take photos? Brother Imo looks so handsome when he's sleeping. Of course I have to record such beautiful things. Fujio smiled casually. This is the first time I'm competing with so many people, and then I'm staying in a hotel room with my good friends. It's not bad to wake up like this in the morning, it'll be a memory in the future. When Qin Mo heard the youngster's words, he loosened his long fingers and tugged at the youngster. The two of them leaned back and lay down on the bed. Fujio did not expect the Almighty to make such a move. The Almighty's reaction was always different from what she expected. Therefore he was caught off guard for a moment. When his whole body was lying on the soft mattress, she saw the Almighty raise his left hand, which was holding the phone, and his right hand pressed her head against his shoulder. Then there was a cracking sound. Her face and the Almighty's shoulder appeared on the screen. Fujio paused and tilted her head to look at the man beside her. He had never been so close to anyone before, but he was really happy. Since it's a memory, it's more meaningful to take a photo together. Qin Mo's voice was very calm, but his attitude was like he would try his best to satisfy his younger brother no matter what he wanted. In addition, he had always been very resistant to taking photos. At this moment, he actually felt that the feeling of taking a photo with another person wasn't so bad after all. It should be said that it was not bad. Qin Mo's thin lips curled up, and his side profile was so handsome that even Fujio wanted to whistle. The Almighty was so handsome that he didn't leave anyone a way out. This expression doesn't look good. Fujio took the phone over to delete it. Qin Mo reached out to stop the youngster. Your embarrassed expression is enough to make me laugh for a year. Keep it. Fujio, why was she so touched just now? The Almighty's purpose for memory was to watch her make a fool of herself? Then I'll take another one. She was so handsome she couldn't lose to the Almighty. This time Chinamo let Fujio be. The two of them were still in the same position, lying on the bed. The difference was that this time Fujio included the Almighty. The first time the two of them took a photo together was in bed, only Fujio and Chinamo. One was rebellious while the other was domineering and indifferent, thought nothing of it. Ordinary people would definitely think a lot when they saw that picture. Chapter 334. So handsome. Fujio looked at the photo and whistled with a devilish smile on her face. Just as she finished praising her handsomeness, the Almighty took away her phone and said in a deep voice, "Go drink your medicine." My phone? Confiscated. Chinamo stood up and walked back to his bed, probably to find something to wear. Fujio's mood now was only comforting herself with good food. She also stood up and took her wallet. "Brother Mo, what do you want to eat?" "I'll go get it." Most hotels provided free breakfast and it was a buffet. Especially in a star-rated hotel like this, the breakfast was even better. But there was still a charge to bring the food to the room. Chinamo buttoned up the last button on his shirt and immediately said in a businesslike manner, "Let's go together after I wash up." "Okay." Fujio smiled, looking exceptionally handsome. Boys were different from girls. He said he was going to wash his face and rinse his mouth. Girls washing up included eyeliner, eyebrows, BB cream and other follow-up procedures. So it was definitely different in terms of time. In less than 3 minutes, the two of them walked out of the room and went down the elevator side by side. The hotel's restaurant was located in the lobby on the second floor. Dark carpets covered the floor, and gorgeous chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Below the lights was an oval marble table, on which many colorful dishes were placed. There were Western food, Chinese food and Japanese food. There were also fruits cut into flower shapes, which stretched down like a long dragon. In addition to these, there were also busy waiters. Because they were in Tokyo, they were also dressed as deacons. Some of them were pouring milk for the guests. They were wearing black suits and pure white gloves, which added a sense of gentleness to them. Hotel guests could choose food from here with the dining tickets in their room cards. Here the food must be fresh. If no one came to pick it up after 10 minutes, the waiters would bring a new batch of food. Fujio and Chinamo chose a distance from the floor-to-ceiling window. From this angle they could see the most prosperous Tokyo streets outside the hotel. Their appearances naturally attracted many people's attention. In the past, Fujio only felt that she was handsome, so she didn't feel much about it. But now that she was with this god, it was indeed. It was mainly because the Almighty looked like a noble young master who was here for morning tea. His every move exuded nobility. Compared to the Almighty, she ate a lot. She didn't know how the Almighty's stomach worked. He only ate so little. Chinamo also wanted to ask Fujio this question. He glanced at the 3 empty plates in the youngster's hands and finally convinced himself that he was still growing in puberty. Otherwise, I really don't know where this guy puts his food. I'm not satisfied yet. Go get another plate of fried rice. Fujio stuffed one hand into her pocket. She didn't feel like she ate much at all. Brother Mo, what else do you want? I'll bring it over. Chinamo thought about it and felt that the way some parents did things was good. They let their children do more things for them. This would give them a sense of achievement, right? Black tea. Okay. Chinamo looked at the youngster's tall and straight back, then casually looked at his phone screen. Spade Z's Weibo account hadn't been logged out, so it was obvious that he was tagging and commenting. It was quite interesting to watch. Chapter 335. That was a message that had been replied to many times. That was why he could see it so easily. Look here, don't put our almighty Chin and Spade Z together, understand? There were actually 2 types of messages like this. First, someone didn't like being tied up. Second, they wanted to attract attention. Obviously, this person was the second type. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept replying. I was a bit impulsive just now, but let me say this first, I like Big Spade too. Whether he liked Spade Z or not was another matter. After Chinamo clicked on that person's message, he only had one feeling. This person was imitating Spade Z in everything and wanted to become an internet celebrity. Chinamo was a businessman. As a businessman, it was easy to see the essence through appearances. It wasn't impossible that Spade Z could attract attention and wanted to spend money on him. Of course, Chinamo didn't rule out the possibility that this person might have really liked Spade Z from the start. But this liking wasn't pure. First, he pretended to be a fan, then he imitated Spade Z, and finally he posted such a message to attract attention. Anyone with a brain could see what he was thinking. This reply must have been avoided by the true Spade fans through the manipulation of public opinion. But some people couldn't see through it and kept interacting with that person. Almighty, I know you are a Spade Z fan too, that's why you said such words. Is to make my Big Spade better, it's okay, good luck. That person replied, I love Big Spade the most, hug. Then a few people started replying happily. I want to touch him. I caught Almighty, I realized he is similar to my Big Spade, he speaks so righteously, I'm a fan too. The topic that had already died down was stirred up again. Those who claimed to be Spade Z's fans didn't realize they had become accomplices to hurt Spade Z. They said they liked him, but they were helping a person who was trying to imitate Spade Z to become famous. In fact, Chinamo didn't care what this person was planning. But he didn't want his brother to see such a disgusting thing. If it wasn't good enough to guide the public opinion, he would add more. This time, Chinamo didn't post on Weibo directly. Instead, after 2 glances at the reposts, he accurately locked onto a person called Sister Turtle. Then he clicked on her nickname and sent a private message. I'll post something about someone on Weibo later. Is there a problem with it? Sister Turtle had imagined many times how their Big Spade would send her a private message on Weibo. But she didn't expect Almighty Chin to send her a private message first. Even Sister Turtle, an experienced and knowledgeable white-collar worker, almost choked on her water. However, they were all people in the workplace, so their words were straightforward. No problem. Sister Turtle didn't ask why Almighty Chin came to talk to her. Smart people would understand once they saw the things on Weibo. Just now, she was still worried that the scheming person would appear again. After all, no matter how good you were to yourself, you couldn't control the thoughts of others. Somehow he could empathize with them. Her heart ached for Big Spade. The youth who said, justice may be late but it is never absent. She was being hurt, but some people who said they liked her became her accomplices. This matter must be stopped. Sister Turtle heaved a sigh of relief at the Almighty's timely appearance. Chapter 336. Sister Turtle was not a fan of the CP. She also knew that there should be a deep brotherhood between esports players. Since the last incident, it could be seen that Almighty Chin was really good to their Big Spade. But someone called their Big Spade. Wasn't that too? Sister Turtle shook her head. As a professional woman, she didn't want to be like those cute high school students. She just needed to protect Big Spade. Sister Turtle thought about it and waited for the Weibo post about someone mentioned by Almighty Chin to be sent again. At this time in a star hotel in Tokyo, Chin Mo's fingers moved, logged into his official Weibo, and posted the edited photo of the youngster. He edited a few words in a very simple tone. Both offensive and defensive are shown immediately. Sister Turtle's computer page stayed on Chin Mo's Weibo. When she saw the photo, she was completely stunned. In the photo, the silver-haired youngster looked at the camera with a smile. Even the curve of the corner of his mouth seemed to be smart and handsome. He squinted his left eye, looking very flirtatious. The black ear stud was very eye-catching. And Almighty Chin cooperated with the youngster, tilting his head down in a very domineering manner. His dark eyes seemed to be overflowing with light, and he even showed his collarbone. He was really aggressive. The two people's temperaments were completely different. In the photo, not only did it not erase their original advantages, but it also highlighted each other's nobility. They were so handsome that people just wanted to scream. But the photo also had special effects. The pair of hairy black devil ears on the top of the head was really beautiful. And they were using pillow, right? What was going on? Sister Turtle's hand holding the mouse was a little confused. Again, she really was not a fan of the CP. But if it kept going like this, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Such a photo with Almighty Chin's words was very meaningful. What was Almighty Chin doing? Even if he was giving out candy, it was not like this. His official Weibo would be blown up. It would indeed be blown up. Over there, the person who wanted to use the topic of Spade Z to become popular was still interacting with the 2 or 3 people who claimed to be Spade Z's fans, wanting others to recognize her. On this side, there was already a huge uproar. He was so handsome that the whole screen was flooded. F***CK, is there something wrong with my eyes? Group photo? A photo of us lying on the bed? Oh, so handsome. 2 demons, so handsome. What should I do? Previous poster, you have no hope. Didn't you see the caption that the Almighty posted? The Almighty is on the left and Spade is on the right. I don't want to say anything else. I just want to ask the Almighty, how long will you keep giving out sweets? I'm afraid my HP will be empty and I'll have a nosebleed. My heart is beating so fast after seeing this photo. Almighty, look at the way you're looking at Big Spade, it's so obvious. A long time ago I had a crush on an esports guru. His Weibo was always posted every year. Moreover, it was a game guide. But now he had changed. I don't want to tell you the reason, but as a single dog I automatically accept this bowl of dog food. I really want to run 2 laps downstairs. My most beloved male god and my second most beloved male god are finally in the same frame. This situation. I actually feel so blessed. I want to be a CP fan. Chapter 337. After Qin Mo's fan mentioned it. Only then did the others realize that, indeed, the Almighty's Weibo was filled with Big Spade's Weibo, apart from the games that he had posted before. That's right, everything was about Big Spade. And if this had happened in the past, posting photos? The Almighty even wanted to wear a black mask to cover his handsome face when he was playing. The media didn't dare to take pictures of him. But look at this. Why did the Almighty post photos? And he blocked all other voices with these 3 words in such a domineering manner. What was he trying to say? Everyone knew what he was trying to say. The Almighty didn't just say it when he said he would protect Big Spade last time. Thinking back to the reply someone had sent here, most of them understood what was going on. The Almighty is here to get revenge for Big Spade. I like this way of getting revenge. I hope the Almighty will come here more often in the future. Almighty Qin and my Big Spade are in the same frame. Seeing this, Sister Turtle reposted Qin Mo's Weibo without hesitation and tagged Fujio. Attack, receive immediately, show, poor my Big Spade, you are so handsome but you still can't attack Almighty Qin. Spade's true fan saw Sister Turtle move, and he immediately followed. Attack, receive immediately, show, touch my Big Spade, fight again next time? This basically depends on temperament. I firmly believe that my Big Spade is the attack, second only to 1 and above millions. Don't mess around, Almighty Qin just happens to be that one person. Qin Mo's fingers slid through the Weibo page, and he looked at those Spade's true fans tagging him, and the corner of his mouth curved up. That sentence, second only to 1 and above millions, Almighty Qin just happens to be that one person. It was inexplicably pleasing to the eye. Involuntarily, his fingertips moved and he liked it. That Spade's fan, who never thought that she would be flipped, was stunned. Almighty Qin was really closer than she thought. Wow. The Almighty gave me a like. The Almighty is saying that Big Spade is the attack. The Almighty is so black-bellied. I just want to know what my Big Spade can say. In the morning you said I was so handsome, so I must be the attacker. Now I'm being attacked. Fujio had no idea what was going on the official Weibo account. She had a piece of hot toast in her mouth, one hand in her pocket, and the other hand was holding a tray. The food on the tray was especially sumptuous. You only eat fried rice? Qin Mo looked up from the phone screen and glanced at the youngster in front of him. The corners of Fujio's mouth curled up. Her smile was as bright as the sun, and it was hard to fade. I always feel hungry, it must be because of the lack of meat. It's also possible that I'm growing. Qin Mo's fingers were still moving. Remembering that the youngster was still in puberty, he frowned. Have you felt any knee pain recently? Fujio shook her head. No. Her chest would occasionally swell up, but it was true. How could she still be growing at this age? It was a little disadvantageous for her. Buy some vitamins after dinner. It's for prevention. Qin Mo was thinking about the situation he would face when he was growing up, but he didn't expect the youngster in front of him to be in a different situation. Chapter 338. Qin Mo lifted his lids and leaned back, sitting elegantly on the chair. You want to know? Let's see. As he said this, he pushed the phone in front of the youngster with a faint smile on his face. Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked at the screen that hadn't dimmed yet. There was a photo with 4 words, attack, receive, immediate, present. And all the comments, all of which were pitying her, the receive? Receive. Didn't the little cutie see her fierce and aggressive eyes? The Almighty was indeed aggressive, but she wasn't bad either. Fujio's fingers paused. No wonder the Almighty, who didn't let her take the phone, pushed it away from her. It was all a trick. Fujio couldn't enjoy the handsome photo of herself and the Almighty anymore. What attack and receive? Chinamo looked at the depressed face of the youngster with the toast in his mouth and smiled happily. Don't talk. Fujio pointed at him. Chinamo was a big brother, so he wouldn't listen to his little brother. Your fans have good taste, especially when it comes to our positions. Brother Imo, you are exposed, I am exposed, so I am also on the offensive. Fujio took the tray as she spoke, using food to make up for this defeat. That photo on Weibo had already blown Lin Feng up. He asked Yunhu along the way, did Captain really sleep with Little Spade? What method did Little Spade use to get Captain to take a photo with him? And Captain even learned to say attack and receive. Shouldn't our team be full of straight men? Even if others are gay, Captain should be the representative of millions of straight men. You mean can you be gay? Yunhu showed his room card and walked into the magnificent hall. Lin Feng shook his head immediately. Oh. Then shut up and take the food. Yunhu took a tray. Lin Feng fixed his eyes on it and strode towards Fujio's table. He was first shocked by the number of empty plates on the table, and then he said to Chinamo seriously, Captain, I came to find Little Spade to eat together. Little Spade, let's see what else you want to eat. If he wanted to ask questions, he had to drag him away alone. Fujio wouldn't refuse good food, so she smiled and was about to get up. Chinmo's voice was calm. He has already eaten 7 plates, 1 toast and 3 glasses of juice. Are you sure you want him to continue eating? These words were directed at Lin Feng. When those deep eyes looked at him again, there was a hint of pressure. Lin Feng immediately loosened his grip. Chinamo raised the porcelain cup and took a sip of iced Americano. The chill immediately dissipated quite a bit. Since he couldn't pull them apart, Lin Feng could only beat around the bush. After all, the 2 main characters in the photo were there. Little Spade, how did you sleep last night? Where's classmate Feng? Why don't I see him? That's right, don't know that Captain and the others are already in the same room. However, Fujio replied to this question very meaningfully. She said in an evil tone, take a guess. Guess your sister. Was Little Spade his biological brother? If you're my brother, then tell me the truth. Lin Feng turned his face and kept communicating with Fujio with his eyes. Fujio held a piece of chewing gum in her mouth, and a bubble came out as she chewed. She looked so handsome, but she was asking for a beating. However, the captain didn't care about this guy. Chapter 339. Attack. Chinamo raised his eyebrows and laughed. He said coldly, it's the same whether you wear clothes or not. That face is too beautiful, so it'll be even worse if you take it off. Don't even think about it. Lin Feng. 10,000 points of critical hit. Fujio couldn't help but laugh. Lin Feng felt that it wasn't suitable for him to stay here in this situation. Yunhu stood behind him dragging 2 plates. The whole team has pictures of you with your shirt off. How can you say that you are the attack? Fujio was interested. Where? Let me see. Lin Feng pulled Yunhu over and said seriously, Little Spade, I have something to discuss with your brother Yunhu. You and Captain can continue eating. How could he pull Yunhu with his strength? Yunhu could knock him down with 1 hand. But Yunhu liked to tease him, so he let Lin Feng pull him away. Fujio saw that there was meat on the tray and her eyes lit up. Unfortunately, the Almighty moved faster than her. He moved his fork and said calmly, let me help you destroy such a sinful thing. You want to see pictures of people with their shirts off? My brother's interests are really different. Actually, I only want to see Brother Mo's. Fujio smiled and blinked her left eye. So, Brother Mo, you can give me your phone and let me see it again. Chinamo was not moved at all. Your eyes are red and you still want to take your phone? If you want to see it so much, I'll take it off in my room. Fujio paused slowly. The Almighty was so cunning and not easy to deal with. And she didn't know if it was because she always flirted with him, but he was getting better at avoiding flirting. Fujio was still a little depressed. Yunhu and Lin Feng came with other team members. Because today was the last day of training, everyone was wearing a very handsome combat uniform. This attracted a lot of attention from the diners. They could vaguely hear people talking in Japanese. Are they esports players? It seems so. Every one of them looks very imposing. Unfortunately, they are not from Tokyo. There is a handsome young man over there like a character from a manga. Esports was very popular in Tokyo. Even Lin Feng, a big man, felt that he was being watched. However, today, Secretary Liang really wasn't in the mood to replace Manager Feng and lead the Supreme Alliance to the training. He was standing at the entrance of the hotel restaurant. His expression was so conflicted that he didn't look like the capable and handsome CEO's assistant that he usually was. Who could tell him what the situation was? There's President Qin, who was so cold that he could freeze people to death, and no one in Jianghu City dared to take a picture of him, was now on the hot search list. There were still 2 people in the photo and both of them were extremely handsome. But Secretary Liang really couldn't appreciate that handsomeness. First, he made an international call to someone he knew, and with great difficulty he suppressed the popularity on Weibo. In the end, Madam had called him. To call him at this time, it would be strange if Manager Feng did not feel conflicted. The waiter at the side couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped forward politely and asked, "Sir, is there anything we can help you with?" At first, the waiter spoke in Dongjing dialect. Seeing that Secretary Liang was still frowning, he repeated it in English. Only then did Secretary Liang realize that there were still people around. He immediately smiled warmly. "Thank you, but no, it's a phone call." As he spoke, Secretary Liang took a step and walked towards a quiet place. Chapter 340. Hello, Madam. Secretary Liang had mixed feelings when he said the first sentence. If Madam asked him about the photo, how would he answer? Could it be that he felt something was wrong with CEO Qin recently? Or maybe it was nothing. It was just that the people in the same team had a good relationship. What the F***ck CEO Qin had been alone since he was a kid. Except for those in the compound, who else had he been close to? When he was in high school he had a group of people following him. At that time, CEO Qin didn't look like a third-generation soldier. He looked like the boss of the school. Now that he was in college he looked like a CEO. There were many people who admired CEO Qin, but the one who was especially close to him was Wuxia. However, he could not rule out the possibility that it was a bond between brothers. He had to be honest. Secretary Liang calmed himself down and asked in a professional tone, "Madam, what can I do for you?" The beauty on the other side of the phone was a little depressed. "Liang. I am here. My son found you." Secretary Liang wanted to say that CEO Qin found me long ago, but Madam only found out now. His eyes were full of tears. "Why didn't you tell me that Mo was talking to a boy? You made me so excited." Secretary Liang's heart skipped a beat. "You knew?" "Yes, I knew." The beauty sighed. "I told you it's impossible for him to change. Help me keep an eye on him. See if there are any other girls in front of him. If there aren't any, create an opportunity for him to meet them." Secretary Liang wanted to say that he had changed, but no, as the CEO's assistant he couldn't just guess. "Yes, Madam. I have arranged it, but CEO Qin is not happy. For example, during this special training in Tokyo, he felt like he was about to be abandoned. Because of the Cali team, CEO Qin looked at him with coldness. Secretary Liang knew that was a warning. You can't go too far. The beauty thought about it and said, "Then you can pay attention to who he is close to. Guys are fine too, but don't let him be too cold." Secretary Liang opened his mouth. "Guys are fine too? Brothers, of course. Mo can't sleep alone, so I heard that he found a good friend to keep him company." After saying that, the beauty bit her teeth. It doesn't seem like something he would do. It's weird. Secretary Liang, so the president really slept with young Master Jiu last night? Those photos weren't taken randomly, right? Why did he feel even more exhausted? Alright, I'm going to join the crew. Let's keep up the catchphrase. Secretary Liang listened to the sound of the phone being hung up. What the hell was the slogan? Madam asked him to do this and he couldn't refuse. It's not that I can't refuse, Madam. But he couldn't refuse his boss. When Secretary Liang received this order, he would first report it to his boss. The boss smiled faintly and said, "That's good. You can train your undercover skills. By the way, your CEO Qin's anti-reconnaissance skills are very good. But you have to understand a mother's concern for her son. Go. In other words, my son will definitely find you, so you have to go too." Secretary Liang took a deep breath. He couldn't bear to look back on the past. He had to think carefully about how he was going to work from now on. First of all, Chapter 341. Because of the photo, the atmosphere among the Supreme Alliance members was a bit strange. Especially Feng Shang, his eyes were full of grievance. He wanted to sue the captain but didn't want to see the lawsuit. Who hasn't seen the fighting video of Sakura Stream Squad? Chinamo was the one who broke the atmosphere. Counting on Fujio? The young man only knew how to smile evilly, which made people think of elegance. Although Wuxia was no longer in this circle, he was a professional, so he would pay attention to this aspect. The ones who hadn't seen it were Shui Yaoyao, Feng Xiang, and Fujio. Everyone watch it again. Lin Feng is responsible for explaining. Chinamo said and stood up. Let's go to the hotel conference hall. Such a hotel usually had a conference hall, but it was expensive. But since Secretary Liang was here, this kind of thing would definitely be arranged properly. All the members sat on both sides of the conference room, which was a very cool scene that could only be seen in movies. Yun, who skillfully turned on the computer, then plugged in the USB drive, and the picture was projected on the big screen in the conference room. The captain of Sakura Stream Squad, Yamaguchi. He used to fight with the captain, and he is best at close combat. According to the style of Sakura Stream Squad, he must be training urgently now. There are two other members I am familiar with. Lin Feng. This ranking match is 5v5, and Lin Feng and I will deal with these two. The most worth mentioning is him, Shuji. Everyone looked at the photo and their eyes became sharp. It's him. Yes, it's the person we met in the training base yesterday. Yun, whose expression didn't change at all. He just joined Sakura Stream Squad this year, but he has already become an official member. The reason why Sakura Stream Squad is so murderous this time is because of him. This person is best at sneak attacks, and his character is full of hostility when he operates it. He is famous for being bloodthirsty, so in this team competition, we need to be wary of him jumping out of the grass and suddenly attacking us. Someone couldn't help saying, his hand speed shouldn't be as fast as Little Spade. The hero is not just about hand speed. Little Spade can indeed avoid his sneak attacks, but our speed is not as fast as him. This is 5v5 ranking. Yun, who put down the pen and reminded everyone of the most critical point. Here is the video of Shuji's sneak attack. Everyone watch it. Time is tight and this is all we can collect. With that, Yun, who tapped open the video. The members of the Supreme Alliance watched helplessly as the two people who were attacking on the main road were suddenly frozen in place by a red shadow that jumped up from behind. Then the red shadow moved back and forth 3 times, completing a double kill in an instant. Surprisingly, he was unscathed. Such a person would be very troublesome to deal with, whether it was attacking or defending a city. The Supreme Alliance members all looked at each other. They saw the same thing in each other's eyes. The conference room suddenly fell silent. There was only one thought in everyone's mind, and that was how they would deal with this person if they encountered him. Everyone knew that the friendly match the next day would be no less difficult than the national competition. Shui Yaoyao and Feng Xiang were even more shocked. As two pure newbies, they finally felt what really sports was. Joining the Supreme Alliance was just the beginning. Chapter 342. It didn't matter, they would definitely win. They still had Spade Z. Thinking of this, Shui Yaoyao and Feng Xiang looked at Fujio together. Fujio didn't laugh this time. She just looked at the video thinking about something. At this time, Shui Yaoyao and Feng Xiang didn't know that in order to protect Fujio's eyes, Chinamo didn't plan to let Fujio play. After watching the video of Sakura Stream's game, the atmosphere of the whole team changed. It was a kind of change in the eyes, which could make people immerse in it unconsciously. When everyone started training, it was already too late. Fujio's hands were a little itchy. In the beginning, she just sat there with a lollipop in her mouth. Later, her eyes began to involuntarily fall on the bright screen. Chinamo sat far away from Fujio, put out the cigarette between his fingers, stood up and walked to the youngster. Look up. Apply the medicine. Chinamo was indeed a good brother, even carrying eye drops with him. When Fujio applied the medicine, she couldn't help but tilt her head to look at the screen. Chinmo's fingers were still lifting the youngster's chin. Seeing him tilt his head, he didn't say anything. But Fujio opened her mouth. She blinked her stung eye and became blind in one eye. I'd better play tomorrow. I'm afraid I can't stop that Shuji without me. His hand speed was really fast, not just fast but most importantly, you didn't know when he would come out. In the game, hiding in the grass could make you invisible. To deal with him, in addition to fast reaction and accurate positioning, the most important thing was to understand the way of sneak attack. Fujio was a hacker. Compared with Shuji, she was better at camouflage attacks, so she could deal with what she was good at. Chinmo's voice was very calm. I'm here, don't worry. Fujio wanted to say something. Chinmo raised his eyebrows. What? You don't believe me? Hearing that, Fujio laughed. I believe you, then I'll cheer for you in the waiting area. When did it start? The two of them gradually became this close. In the beginning, they got along with each other with a smell of gunpowder. But now they both knew what each other was like. The trust of the strong didn't need to be said much. But Fujio still felt a little regret. I thought I could fight with you, brother Imo. What a pity. When he said this, the young man was smiling. Chin Imo kept the eye drops and stuffed them into his trouser pocket. His other hand ruffled Fujio's silver hair. Don't say, oh, it'll be more believable. This guy's words were so annoying. How did he manage to endure it? Was it because he was good-looking? Fujio was indeed good-looking. She lifted her hand and placed it on Chin Mo's shoulder. Brother Imo, look at my serious eyes. I only saw the redness. Chin Imo frowned. It's not good to stay indoors all the time. I'll bring you out for a walk. Our goal is the National League. If your eyes are still like this, they will be affected. Fujio really couldn't stay here. It hurt her eyes to look at the computer screen all the time. After hearing Chin Mo's words, Fujio understood the gravity of the situation. She put on a plush black coat and followed Chin Imo out. This time, Secretary Liang didn't dare to follow anymore. The outdoor air in Tokyo was very fresh. In addition, because it was too cold, snow had already started to fall. Everything looked very beautiful. Chapter 343. But in the next second, Fujio, who was about to walk forward, paused. The afternoon light shone on her body warmly. People were walking to and fro on the business street, and some were looking up. Some were exclaiming, some were laughing, and some were talking. Gosh, that must be our number one. The number one team in the whole server, my favorite Hoshino, he's so handsome. I even went to buy Hoshino's merchandise yesterday. I love him so much that I couldn't get a lot of things. Did you see that smile just now? My heart was trembling. That person was asking the girl standing next to Fujio. Then he turned around and saw a silver-haired handsome young man who was no less handsome than Hoshino. He was stunned. Fujio's eyes fell on the large LED screen on the business street. She was very familiar with that person. So familiar that she stopped abruptly. Of course, Chin Imo noticed that the young man didn't keep up. He turned around and saw that the young man was lifting his chin with his left hand in his pocket. His eyes were full of tenderness as he watched the scene on the screen. Tenderness? Not completely. There were too many other emotions. What kind of person could make someone stare at him like that? Chin Imo also saw that scene. Hoshino, an esports player who had emerged in the past 2 years, was extremely popular in Tokyo. The reason why he was liked by so many people was not only because of his achievements, but also because of his face, which was comparable to that of a movie star. Do you know him? This was Chin Mo's first question. Fujio turned her head, and her silver hair fell down. How could that be? I just think he's handsome. Really? Chin Imo didn't continue this topic. Fujio laughed. Actually, I know him, but he doesn't know me. I've watched his games and the scene is good. Chin Imo looked at the young man again, and his voice was very calm. Got it. The Almighty said that he got it, but it seemed that he didn't believe her words. Fujio also knew that her behavior was a bit obvious. It was only when Hoshino appeared that she stopped. But she didn't plan to do anything. In life, one had to look forward. Hoshino should be living a happy life now. That was enough to know. She didn't touch any of her bank accounts and bank cards because she wanted to cover up her identity. Once the matter here was settled, he would go and deal with the others. However, Fujio didn't know that in the eyes of others, she had a different expression. Chin Imo looked at the youngster without any expression on his face. His fingers paused for a moment, and his long and narrow eyes seemed to have lost some of the warmth they should have. In the end, because they had walked too far, they had to take a bus back. Because of the roads, there was only public transportation. The Tokyo tram was heated and very clean. But as long as it was public transportation, there would be a lot of people. The scenery outside the car window kept changing. Fujio felt a little squeezed. Chin Imo was even more unsuited for such an environment. Fujio wondered if this was the Almighty's first time taking public transportation. She had been staring at that handsome and noble side profile for too long. An uncle came up and was about to bump into Fujio. Chapter 344. Fujio pressed her head against it. It smelled a lot better in an instant. Although the trams in Tokyo were clean. But there were many people, so it still smelled good. Now it was gone. Fujio touched her nose and lifted her head. She found out that she and the Almighty were in such a position that she wanted to kiss him. Seriously, don't blame her for thinking too much. She had been teased by the Almighty recently. If Qin Imo knew what the young man was thinking, he would have laughed coldly. Who was teasing whom? There were people behind and people in front. Qin Imo was like a dead end. Fujio didn't move back. She pressed her head against Qin Mo's. Finally, she found it interesting, so she used her fluffy head to push against him. In such an environment, the Almighty couldn't do anything to her. Qin Imo really couldn't do anything to the young man. He held the young man's back with one hand and grabbed the bracelet on the tram with the other. His face was extremely handsome. Who knew that the guy in his arms would be so naughty? After Fujio bumped into him, she clearly heard the Almighty's sigh. She was amused and continued to push. Qin Imo lowered his eyes and looked at the head that was still trying hard in his arms. The little silver swirl on the top of her head made her look especially cute. He resisted the urge to throw the young man out of the tram like trash. He lowered his voice and said in a tone that sounded like an older brother educating his younger brother, "You've had enough, haven't you?" Fujio smiled. She pressed against him and stopped. After being teased by the young man, Qin Mo's inexplicable discomfort dissipated a lot. Even the corners of his mouth lifted a little. He was a little crazy. Because the tram was too crowded. Therefore there was nothing wrong with their current posture. It was just that. Fujio's head was slightly below Qin Mo's shoulder. The silver-haired young man lowered his eyes, and the man looked like he was abstinent and domineering. Someone wanted to take a picture of this scene. However, at the next stop the two got off. Qin Imo walked out first. It was a street with good air, but without that fluffy head in front of his chest he felt a little uncomfortable. But even so, Qin Imo didn't forget the young man's gaze when he stood under the building and looked up at the screen. They should know each other, it was impossible not to know from that gaze. But according to the information he got, the young man didn't have any interaction with Hoshino. That's right. Qin Imo had investigated Fujio. At the very beginning. Just how early was it? As early as the first time Coco pointed at the computer and showed him a beautiful character in the game. Spade Z. The letter Z at the end successfully caught his attention. Z0. The technique was very similar, and it matched with his understanding of Z back then. His suspicions grew even stronger when he found out that Spade Z was capable of cyber attacks. But when he found out that Spade Z was Fujio, that layer of suspicion completely faded away. Even though he did not know what Zero looked like, he was sure it was a woman. Qin Imo tilted his head and glanced at the youngster beside him. And Fujio, the rich playboy who used to pester him to be his sugar daddy, was unlikely to be Zero. But Qin Imo didn't let go of any possibility. He sent someone to investigate where Fujio was on the day of the attack at the 5th Avenue 3 years ago. Chapter 345. Fujio saw that Qin Imo was looking at her and immediately smiled evilly. Then she felt her inflamed eyes itch, so she raised her hand to rub them. Qin Imo was one step faster than the youngster. He grabbed her wrist and his side profile was handsome. "Don't touch, there are many germs on your hand." Fujio felt that this kind of minor illness was harder to treat than a broken arm. She just needed to reattach the broken arm. Something like eye inflammation really needed time. Feeling that the youngster couldn't bear it, Qin Imo simply took the youngster back to the hotel. That posture made Manager Feng, who had just arrived in Tokyo, stunned. He couldn't figure out the situation. However, Manager Feng was the smartest not to ask what he shouldn't ask. Before the official battle. With the return of Manager Feng, the Supreme Alliance, who had been depressed all afternoon, finally felt a little more at ease. The next day. The snow stopped and the sky was blue and beautiful. The friendly match was held at the training base yesterday. Since it was a friendly match, of course, the media wouldn't be informed. But some people in Tokyo would always know about it through some grapevine. There were 1 or 2 esports reporters who came. Of course, their focus was on Sakura Stream, not a team that didn't even enter the top 4 in Wuxia. In fact, there is no suspense at all in this match. One of the reporters adjusted his camera, feeling a little bored. The opponent will definitely be suppressed by Sakura Stream and can't even move. Another reporter yawned. You can't say that. There is still something to watch in this match, such as Shuji's performance. My boss told me to write more. Hearing their words, another Tokyo esports fan who came to watch the match shook his head in disagreement. Reporters these days, they just spout nonsense without investigating clearly. Although he was from Tokyo, he wasn't a fan of Sakura Stream. It was Qin Imo of the Supreme Alliance. Last year, the Supreme Alliance didn't enter the top 4 completely because Almighty Qin didn't participate. In this match it was hard to say who would win. They are coming. The two reporters suddenly became spirited, and their eyes also shook with excitement. Snap, snap, snap. 3 consecutive shots were taken at Sakura Stream Team who entered the field. Sakura Stream Team's uniform was in line with the local aesthetic of Tokyo. On the back of the pure white shirt, there was a logo and blooming cherry blossoms. The tallest among them was their captain Yamaguchi. His height didn't look like someone who played esports, but more like someone who played basketball. Following closely behind was Shuji, who was the most popular candidate. He had a red bandage on his forehead, making his handsome face look even more devilish and murderous. As soon as the Sakura Stream people came in, the others who came to watch the battle also stood up. The arena wasn't big, but it could accommodate dozens of people. There were still a lot of Sakura Stream fans, and that side was full of spectators. In contrast, the audience on the opposite side of Sakura Stream School was calm and somewhat desolate. In Tokyo, it was not uncommon for people to fly from one city to another for their favorite esports players. From this, it could be seen that the other party's strength was nothing much. He didn't even have a die-hard fan. However, they did not know. The reason why there was no one here was because Supreme Alliance had always done things this way. In Manager Feng's words, every time their almighty Qin showed his face, he had to pay by the second. How could he let anyone come in to watch and film? Chapter 346. The closer it was to the national competition, the more secretive their tactics were, the better it was for them. So Manager Feng simply hid the Supreme Alliance's movements. Even though the whole nation knew that the Supreme Alliance was in Tokyo, they didn't know where they were playing. TSK so miserable. That reporter couldn't help but shake his head again. He thought it was a good topic, so he took a picture of the audience with only 1 or 2 people. Only by comparison can we show the strength of our Tokyo. Just as he was saying this, he heard a noise from the opposite side. Under the light and shadow, 13 people walked out neatly. Each of them was wearing the same uniform, a dark black coat with a circle of pure white fox fur, similar to a cloak, which made them look like knights that only appeared in comics. Which team's uniform looked like this? Wasn't it too extravagant? Extravagant? Was money a problem for the Supreme Alliance? Of course not. Manager Feng smiled like a fox, the kind that hid a knife in his smile. Chinamo took the lead, Fujio stood on his left, and Yunhu stood on his right. Everyone had their own unique style, which immediately formed a handsome and threatening scenery. Especially Fujio's silver hair, which was simply eye-catching, not to mention the lollipop in her thin lips. The 2 reporters on the opposite side didn't expect that the people of this team would have such an aura. Especially the one who took the lead, so noble and domineering, with an indescribable sense of shock. So handsome. Is this the weak team from Wuxia? They look pretty good. Maybe it's just their good-looking faces. But they are too good-looking. People like them can be stars. No matter how good-looking they are, they will be destroyed today. Boys and girls had different ways of thinking. In the esports arena, what was the use of being good-looking? Good skills were the real handsome ones. Shuji, who was standing over there, also saw Fujio. He immediately turned his head, gave her a thumbs up, and then slowly fell down. This action of his caused a commotion among the audience. Sakura Stream. Victory. Sakura Stream. Victory. Amidst the loud cheers, Fujio looked at his actions. He had one hand in his pocket, and his handsome face didn't look annoyed. Instead, the corners of his mouth curled up a little, looking like he didn't care at all. The youth's arrogant attitude was even more infuriating. Shuji narrowed his eyes, pointed at Fujio, and said to Yamaguchi, "Captain, I'll keep an eye on him." Yamaguchi didn't know about the conflict between them yesterday, so he was a little surprised by Shuji's request. "Okay, but remember, the person we're going to deal with this time is Chinamo." "Chinamo? Isn't it the one with the hand injury?" Shuji didn't take it seriously. "I'll leave him to you, Captain. I'll kill them after I'm done with that guy." Yamaguchi frowned. Shuji, Supreme Alliance is different from the teams we met before. Don't underestimate them. Chapter 347. Shuji seems to be fiercer than usual today. This is going to be interesting. When Shuji fights, even 4 people can't stop him. Is Shuji going to go on a killing spree? I'm looking forward to it. The passion of the fans was irresistible. In the midst of such cheers, Manager Feng shook hands with the manager of the other team with the same smile. Shall we start? The manager of Sakura Stream team wanted to say a few more words to show off their achievements, or at least to finish the small talk. But after hearing Feng Yi's words, he swallowed his words to show his generosity. Let's start. It was not an official competition, so there were no 1v1 or duo matches. There was only a 5v5 siege match. But even if it was a friendly match, it still followed the international esports rules. In the wild game of Hero, everyone could die an unlimited number of times and come back to the city to be resurrected. But in a real esports competition, everyone could only die 3 times. After the 3rd time they had to leave the computer. Obviously, the focus of the so-called siege matches was to attack the city. As long as the opponent's city was destroyed, they would win. This was also the difference between Hero and other games, as it paid great attention to the cooperation of the team. Shuji couldn't sit still anymore. He put on the black wristband and stood up. His eyes were fixed on Fujio. But Fujio just laughed and leaned back with a lollipop in her mouth, looking really handsome and annoying. According to Shuji's temper, he got angry immediately. Little Spade, what are you doing? Why are you staring at him? Lin Feng wanted to make fun of her before going on stage. Unexpectedly, Fujio said seriously, this guy is impetuous, so provoking him will help us. If you want to provoke him, don't do it here. Let's go on stage. Lin Feng was about to pull Fujio up. But at this time, Qin Mo's calm voice came over, he won't go on stage. What? Not only Lin Feng but also Yin Wuya, who was next to him, was shocked. Little Captain won't go on stage? Little Captain is so good at fighting he won't go on stage? Are you kidding me? His eyes are inflamed, so he'd better not play games for 3 days. Qin Mo's face was still as elegant as ever. However, that invisible pressure never disappeared. Lin Feng and Yin Wuyao couldn't help but worry. If Spade Z wasn't there, their attack, Yun, who was calm. Captain, who's going to fight? You, me, Lin Feng, Yin Wuyao. Qin Mo said, Shui Yao Yao. Shui Yao Yao was stunned. Could she do it? There were so many Supreme Alliance members here. She really didn't expect the Almighty to choose her. Qin Mo didn't say anything. She reached out her hand and touched Shui Yao Yao's head. You're good at healing, so you'll be in charge of supporting the offense. Run back and forth in the wilderness and heal whoever you see dying. Don't worry, it'll be fine. With Brother Mo here, you have to believe that Almighty Qin chose you because he has faith in you. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth would twitch every time the youth said, oh. Qin Mo watched the youngster's actions. His eyes turned cold, but he didn't say anything. After the commentator and the referee were in position, Qin Mo stood up indifferently, tilted his handsome chin, and bit the zipper of his jacket with his thin lips. He took off the jacket with his right hand and threw it to Fujio. Let's go. Chapter 348. Baby Feng was left behind. And before Almighty Qin left, he gave him a very important task. That was to keep an eye on his idol and not let that guy rub his eyes all the time. This was Almighty Qin's smoothness, but Feng Shang felt that this task was quite difficult, especially when he couldn't control his idol at all. Idol, Almighty Qin said not to let you rub your eyes. The Almighty is in the competition and can't see here. If you don't say anything, who will know? In fact, Fujio wanted to rub her eyes even more at this moment. It wasn't that she didn't believe in the Almighty's strength. She was worried about the Almighty's hand. But, if the Almighty lost today, she would find a chance to kill Shuji more than 10 times. Thinking of this, Fujio was about to raise her hand again. Qin Mo happened to turn his head, and his deep eyes were full of meaning. This was why it was hard to deal with a psychic. Whatever she did, he would know in advance. Fujio had no choice. She put her hand down, smiled, and grabbed the phone that Baby Feng was keeping for the Almighty. Feng Shang felt that he really couldn't deal with his idol, the bandit. Could he find someone else to watch him? Fujio took the phone and sent a WeChat message to Qin Mo. Brother Mo, are you going to look back to see if I'm rubbing my eyes during the competition? Qin Mo paused, took out the phone from his pocket, and then tilted his head to type. If you don't want me to look back, be a good boy. Now give back the phone you took from Feng Shang. Seeing the Almighty looking at her, Fujio threw the phone at Feng Shang with a lollipop in her mouth and laughed. I told you not to give it to me. Why are you so disobedient? Feng Shang, who was the one who came up to grab it? Who was it? The people of Sakura Stream also noticed that Fujio didn't come down. Shuji's eyes suddenly changed and he was very angry. What do you mean? He spoke in Tokyo dialect. But this didn't affect Manager Feng's acceptance. Oh, this is our battle lineup today. Little Spade won't participate. Won't participate? Shuji's hands were almost broken. He had prepared for a long time, but the other side told him that he wouldn't participate. Let him come down. Shuji gritted his teeth, his face fierce. After listening to his words, the fans in the audience began to look at each other. What's going on? I don't know. Shuji seems very unhappy. Did that team do something wrong? Taking advantage of the wind, Shuji sneered. Your unknown team without him, are you sure you can beat me? Let me tell you, I want to compete with him. Tell him to come down. Yun, who understood Dongjing dialect. After hearing his words, he suddenly turned around, his aura extremely cold. Yamaguchi couldn't help reprimanding, Shuji. Shut up. Am I wrong? Shuji tilted his head. I know Captain is afraid of that Chinemo. He hasn't played in the professional league for a year. How strong can he be? I'm giving Supreme Alliance a chance by sending that person out. Upon hearing this, Fujio's beautiful eyes narrowed. She held onto the railing with one hand and jumped down from the audience. Her black coat was lifted up, and her cool pose drew gasps from the audience. Chapter 349. Under everyone's gaze. That handsome young man who looked like a vampire aristocrat walked up to Shuji with his hands in his pocket. He was so bloodthirsty and cold, like an avenger coming out of the darkness. That Chinemo? Fujio tilted her head and her eyes were cold. How dare you call my brother that? Shuji wasn't annoyed but felt his blood boiling. It's hot, isn't it? If it's hot, do it yourself. Do it myself. Fujio paused and curled up her lips. I won't. To be honest, I've met a lot of people like you. Why should I compete with you just because you want me to? Is the Sakura Stream team a bandit, forcing others to compete? Feng Shang. I don't believe me, no one looks more like a bandit than you right now. Fujio said this in a Tokyo accent, and the crowd burst into an uproar. The opponent's agent hurried over and said, No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Can't you guys just shut up and compete properly? Fujio was a very protective person, and in her mind, the Almighty was the only one who had made her suffer. If the opponent said bad things about the Almighty, it would be like asking for death. Chinemo didn't expect that the young man would have such a big reaction, although the timing wasn't right. But looking at the young man's fierce look, he was in a good mood for no reason. He walked over and rubbed the young man's head. Okay, go back. Remember, don't rub your eyes. Fujio, how did the Almighty do it? He didn't forget to warn her at this time. Shuji was so angry that his chest was churning. Now there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to destroy the opponent and make the young man regret what he said just now. Thinking of this, he turned his head and was the first to sit in front of the computer. He pulled his fingers and put on the pure black headphones. The agent finally let out a sigh of relief. After all, he couldn't control Shuji. The teammates of Sakura Stream team didn't say anything. They knew what kind of player Shuji was. The opponent thought that Shuji was impatient and wanted to irritate him, but they didn't know that the angrier he was, the more brutal he would be when he killed someone. Compared to Shuji's murderous look, Almighty Chin was casual and noble. His slender fingers slid over the headphones, and he held the mouse in a very beautiful gesture. It made people feel like he wasn't holding a mouse but a chess piece. In front of him was a chessboard. The young master was like jade. He didn't expect to see such inviolable people in modern times. This was the first thought that came to the minds of the audience. His second thought was, of course, to let Shuji kill them all as soon as possible. However, it was different from the people here. Among the two Supreme Alliance fans, one of them already felt like his blood was about to boil. 1 year. For a whole year, Almighty Chin hadn't played in a professional league like this. Although it was just a friendly match, only those who had played the game knew how exciting it was to be able to see it live. Crack. The game's music started playing. The scene officially entered. It was synchronized to the big screen in the arena. He's here. The two reporters raised their cameras. Even the commentators did not know why, but this time they felt nervous like never before. Not to mention Shui Yaoyao, who was sitting in front of the computer. She only felt that her palms were sweating. But her eyes were very firm. This was the first battle. This was the first battle she would prove herself in. Attack. Chinemo said these words lightly but with a different kind of power. Chapter 350. There were 3 ways to attack. Left, center and right. These 5 players except for Shui Yaoyao were all professionals. Not to mention the opponent's lineup. Cool. So fast. Sakura Stream Team will win this round. Whether it was the 2 reporters or the fans in the audience, they all had the same opinion. After all, just from the screen they knew that Sakura Stream Team was not only fast, but also had 3 players in the middle lane. Seeing that they had almost reached the Crystal Tower, 3 or 4 strong attacks, the firepower was very fierce. Destroyed, the tower is going to be destroyed. But was it really destroyed? They saw a person suddenly accelerate and rush directly to this side. Originally, the 3 players of Sakura Stream Team were not afraid. But they didn't expect that a stun came out of nowhere. The 3 players were collectively frozen. That person concentrated his energy, first killed one with a sweep, and finally turned back for a critical hit. Jianghu double kill. My god. Who is this person so powerful? The fans in the audience were a little stunned. However, other than Jianghu, no one else had seen the person who had used the fatal stun that had assisted him. The people of the Supreme Alliance finally breathed a sigh of relief. But even with a double kill, the situation was not optimistic. Because their bottom lane was attacked again. And Shuji double kill. Double kill? Did that mean that Yin Wuxiao and Lin Feng didn't stop him? They were all killed by Shuji. The people of the Supreme Alliance trembled, everyone became nervous and even clenched their hands. However, almost in the next second, Shui Yaoyao only saw a line of words appear on the screen in front of her. Our defense tower has been destroyed. Beautiful. The commentator couldn't help sighing in Tokyo dialect. It seems that Shuji's hand speed has become faster these days. His attack power is also amazing. This time the people of the Supreme Alliance are in big trouble. Lin Feng didn't expect that he would die. His eyes were heavy and he typed in the dialogue box. After the sneak attack he retreated very fast. Should we add another player to go down the bottom lane? No need. The person who spoke was Qin Mo. Even though he was still fighting in front, no one expected him to have the time to reply. Both of you walk in tandem, stick close to the bushes. Lin Feng grunted in acknowledgement. After recovering his health in the center of the city, he and Yin Wuxiao continued to attack the bottom lane. Xiao and Ren are gone. Strange, there's nothing in the bushes here either. At this moment someone shouted. He's on the middle lane. Shuji was indeed in the middle lane. He approached Qin Mo on purpose looking for a chance to sneak attack. How could Lin Feng let him have his way? He sped up and blocked with his sword before sweeping horizontally. Motherf asterisk her, I didn't hit it. The other party was too fast and good at fighting in the wild, just like the information said. Even if he and Yin Wuxiao worked together, they would only be able to take out half of his health. When Shuji restarted, his HP was full. Then he did another sweep. A rumbling sound rang out. Shuji double kill. Another double kill? Everyone in Supreme Alliance paled. 4 lives, Lin Feng and Yin Wuxiao had already died twice. If they died again they would be asked to leave the field by the referee. That also meant that the 5v5 would become a 3v5, 3 against 5. It would be a tough fight. Chapter 351. Fortunately, their performance in the middle lane was good, and they took down 2 defense towers in a row. The next defense tower was the opponent's main city. However, it was obvious that Yunhu's HP was gone, and only a little bit of HP was left to support him. Any random person would be able to kill him in a second. If Jianghu died they would lose 5 lives. It seems that the situation of the Supreme Alliance is not optimistic. TSK, I guess Shuji is not interested in this game. His opponents are too weak. I know, right? That reporter curled his lips and looked very disdainful. I don't know what the opponent's captain is doing. Does he really deserve to be the captain? He is not even as good as that guy named Jianghu. Didn't Shuji just say that his hand was injured? Another reporter was quite understanding. I don't think it's because of the injury. It's because he is too lousy. When the discussion outside the field started, Fujio was still sitting in the same position, with her right hand behind her back and a lollipop in her mouth, but she didn't rub her eyes again. Feng Shang was anxious. He wished he could be on the field now so he could help. At this time, Shuji had already started to attack the second defense tower on their right. Lin Feng was a little anxious and wanted to rush over. Then Qin Mo sent a message, don't go out of the tower, just defend. It meant that they shouldn't attack. Lin Feng and Yin Wuyao also knew that it was not suitable for them to attack now. But they were worried about one thing. What if Shuji attacks the captain from the side when he sees that we don't go out? Yun, whose status showed that he was still healing in the city. That meant that there were only 2 people under the defense tower in the middle lane, Shui Yaoyao and the captain. If Shuji went over, it would probably be another double kill. Let him come. 3 words. A tone that was not painful at all. Even Yin Wuyao, who had never played with Qin Mo in the league tournament, felt an indescribable passion rise in his heart when he saw that sentence. As for Lin Feng, his eyes, which had been filled with anxiety, gradually calmed down. After killing the monsters, he ran back to the defensive tower. At this time, Shui Yaoyao sent a kill and killed a member of Sakura Stream Squad. Seeing this, Shuji immediately changed his route and went to outflank Qin Mo. This time, the other party is probably going to be annihilated. That's right, there's no point in killing one person, there are still 2 people left in Sakura Stream. Yo, are they starting to run back? I've never seen such a cowardly captain. While the reporters were still talking, the 2 members of Sakura Stream Squad rushed towards Qin Mo. Shui Yaoyao stood under the defense tower, her hand holding the mouse tightly. She had the urge to turn around and run. However, she didn't forget that before they set off, Almighty Qin said that this path was mainly for attacking, so she couldn't retreat. It was as though Supreme Alliance was being chased and beaten. Yun, whose HP was full. But what was the point? In such a short time, it was impossible for him to return to the middle lane to help. Chapter 352. What on earth is the captain of the Supreme Alliance doing? He can't even beat a female player. How on earth did he become the captain? That's right. Female players all know how to kill people. They don't know anything except being chased. Isn't this just in line with the image of the Chinese people? Speaking of this, the audience burst into laughter. The 2 players of Sakura Stream Squad were in a killing frenzy, and they rushed forward recklessly. Yamaguchi was still on the left lane, and he was about to tell them not to go. But it was too late. The 2 players saw that Shuji was about to arrive, so they didn't have anything to be afraid of. They had to kill each other once. They are looking for death. These 4 were Fujio's words. She had a faint smile on the corner of her mouth, but if you looked closely, you would find that it was full of bloodthirst. As soon as she finished her words, the 3 of them appeared behind Qin Mo. Shuji was behind the 2 players. The people in front of him launched 2 big moves at Qin Mo. According to logic, 2 killing 1 should be enough. But in that second, Qin Mo moved and avoided one of the attacks. When the other attack came, he had already entered the defense line. How could the people of Sakura Stream Squad miss such a good opportunity? Now in their minds, Qin Mo's skills were so bad that they couldn't be any worse. Probably because of his hand injury, his momentum was so weak that it was pitiful. Shuji didn't care about the opponent's reason. With such bad skills, how could he fight with him? He waved the mouse and sped up, ready to kill Qin Mo and Shui Yaoyao together. It was so aggressive. The fans of Sakura Stream Squad already felt that there was no suspense. It was absolutely a double kill. However, what they didn't expect was that Qin Mo, who they thought was very bad, actually turned a sword shadow at this moment, and a huge wind rose around him. The bright light almost occupied the whole screen. The 2 players closest to him were instantly killed by his 2 back and forth movements, and they only had 1 drop of HP left. The 2 players of Sakura Stream Squad were stunned, and they wanted to run back immediately. At this time, Shui Yaoyao swept across with a big move, and with a bang 2 kills. Shuji didn't retreat. He also saw that the captain of the Supreme Alliance could only sweep back and do nothing else. Although the sweep was quite accurate, it was useless against him. Shuji wielded the keyboard, manipulated his game character, and directly stabbed Qin Mo's face. Before the commentator could say anything, the fans shouted, "Is that person stupid? He ran so hard just now and now he's sending himself to death." Shuji also narrowed his eyes, and the murderous intent in the corner of his mouth was obviously mocking, "Trash, go to hell." With his speed, no one could stop him. Unless it was that young man, there was still a possibility. Someone else? Shuji. Yamaguchi almost couldn't help but shout. However, it was already too late. The moment the opponent ran over, Qin Mo leaped up. Even his silver battle robe had a white halo around it as he used a critical strike. Under the dazzling special effect, people could only see that 2/3 of Shuji's HP bar was instantly killed. "It's all right." Shuji's hands were fast, he could definitely run away. Those are the words of a reporter. Fujio sat there and curled up the corner of her mouth. You aren't the only people in the world who are fast at cultivating. Run away. Since he had fished her up. Chapter 353. Fujio tilted her head, and with a lollipop in her mouth, she gently spat out 2 words. Go. Then. The people on the scene only heard a booming sound. Chin-Emo turned his hand over, holding the mouse and pressing the keys with his left hand. The long sword flashed and hit Shuji right in the middle. That kind of attack. Handsome, unruly and invincible. Everyone looked at this scene in a daze, and they all felt an unprecedented shock from their eyes. What on earth was that? 3000 knife cutting. This is the real 3000 knife cutting. A fan of the Supreme Alliance stood up in the audience, and his voice was so loud that it almost shook people's eardrums, which showed how excited he was. 3000 knife cutting? What was that? People almost didn't believe that Shuji would die like this. However, the screen did show the logo of KO. They looked down and saw Chin-Emo, who was sitting in front of the computer. That man was so handsome that he looked like he came out of a comic book. He wore headphones on his pure black hair, and the whole screen was filled with silver light. However, did he think that it was over? Not at all. The man's slender fingers held the mouse, and with a very handsome posture, he turned around and rushed straight. Only a booming sound. The last defense crystal tower in the middle lane of Sakura Stream Team was destroyed. The commentators couldn't come out. How could they explain it? Not only did he kill people, but he also went back to attack the city. The people of Sakura Stream Team suddenly fell into silence. In one team there were 4 people in the state of resurrection. Except for Yamaguchi, who was on the road, he was still there. The other 3 players only felt that their arms were numb. What on earth was that? Yamaguchi's deep voice came over. 3000 knife cutting? Isn't 3000 knife cutting a unique skill? This was what everyone understood it to mean. They all knew that when the captain of the Supreme Alliance turned around to deal with them for the first time, he used this unique skill. 3000 silver lights flashed, they all saw it. But what was that later? This time, Yamaguchi not only lowered his voice but also his eyes. For Chin-Emo, 3000 knife cutting is not just a simple unique skill, but 3 goals he wants to achieve. Originally there was no time to talk. But Yamaguchi couldn't rush to the middle lane. Rushing over was courting death. On the contrary, if he destroyed another tower here on the top lane, they still had hope to win. After listening to Yamaguchi's description, the 3 members of Sakura Stream were all stunned. 3 targets? What the captain meant was, that person had planned it from the very beginning. First, he would reduce the 2 of them to 1 drop of HP, then let his teammates kill them, then he would go and kill Shuji. His final goal was to attack their defense tower. What 3000 knife cutting? It's just luck. Shuji was very unconvinced and his eyes were gloomy. If I also had a teammate to heal me, I could also continuously cast spells and have a healer keep up with me. 3 targets? Then I will break his saber. After saying that, Shuji rushed out. 2 of the Sakura Stream members didn't believe that anyone could have such a precise plan. They waved their weapons and shouted, I'll heal. I'll support you. The 3 of them set off together. Yamaguchi didn't have time to stop him. Chapter 354. He didn't trust Yamaguchi 100%. His commanding power was scattered, and he was arrogant and conceited. People who didn't know would think they had 2 captains now. Maybe this was the disadvantage of a rookie king. He was too arrogant, and the manager of Sakura Stream Team didn't want to discipline him. The Almighty had probably noticed this from the start. That was why he attacked like this. But compared with provoking people, the Almighty was better. He knew that Shuji was easily agitated, but he killed him in the grass with the field battle that Shuji was good at. It could be seen that Shuji had lost all his judgment. As soon as he saw Chin-Emo turn around and run, he immediately ordered, chase him. But they didn't notice that Jianghu had resurrected at this time. Yin Wuxiao and Lin Feng on the right side also began to quickly move to the center. All of a sudden they formed an encirclement on the left and the front. Seeing that the people chasing in front of him were gone, Shuji realized something and wanted to retreat. But Jianghu and Shui Yaoyao had already rushed over. They had seen Jianghu's fierceness, so they used a big move. One of them immediately lost half of his HP. The two who had only died once thought that Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao didn't dare to fight close to them at this time, so they wanted to attack Jianghu and then retreat. But they didn't expect that the opponents didn't hesitate at all. They directly rushed over and stood in front of Jianghu, and then used a big move. Go. 2 members of Sakura Stream team died instantly. Shuji was the first to notice the danger, so he directly jumped into the grass without saying anything. He wanted to ambush there, and when Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao came over, he would give them a big move from the back. Because it was clear that Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao had lost HP. Jianghu went to kill their captain, so he was the most suitable person to guard here. But what Shuji didn't expect was that as soon as he squatted down, swoosh, his back was pierced through. It was just like when he had killed someone before. Someone had hidden in the bushes and slashed him with a knife. Who was it? Shuji's eyes were red. He moved his mouse and wanted to fight back. But it was useless. Chinamo moved beautifully and fixed him with skills. Then he started to beat him up. Shuji had never been humiliated like this before. The people in the Sakura Stream audience didn't know what to say, and everyone covered their mouths. The 2 reporters were even more speechless. Those fans who said that it was in line with the style of Chinese people shut their mouths. His face hurt from the slap. But Feng Shang didn't understand. Idol, why didn't the Almighty use a critical strike and kill him directly? Why is he still beating him up bit by bit? Fujio wasn't sure either. If it were her, she could just freeze and kill him directly, which would save a lot of time. However, very soon, they knew the answer. Chinamo typed slowly, "Does it feel good to kill you like this?" Shuji, who had a little bit of HP left, might have had a chance to escape. With a bang, he stood up from his seat. He clenched his fists and looked over at Supreme Alliance with a dark gaze. Chinamo took advantage of this gap and moved his mouse. KO? The enemy's entire team was annihilated. Fujio looked at this scene and seriously compared herself with the Almighty. In comparison, the Almighty was more shameless. What was the name of her provocation just now? It was not as real as the Almighty's provocation. Chapter 355. Shuji's face turned red and white as he watched himself fall down in blood. He didn't understand why the other party had to kill him like this, bit by bit. Manager Feng understood a little. After all, he knew his Almighty so well. According to the Almighty's style, he wouldn't cut people down so slowly unless, has this Shuji met Boss Qin before? Feng Yi asked his brother. Feng Shang stuttered as he recounted what had happened at the training ground that day. His face was filled with anger. After Manager Feng heard this, he instantly understood and said meaningfully, "Co Qin is helping someone get revenge." Revenge? Feng Shang didn't understand. Then, the person who won that day was my idol. Feng Yi patted his brother's shoulder. "Young man, you're still too young." Boss Qin was the kind of person who would blame Spade Z's eye inflammation on that match. So, when he killed Shuji, it was clear that he wanted to hang him up and beat him. Yamaguchi knew that they were bound to lose this game. He wanted to go back and defend, but he was the only one who had resurrected. He could no longer withstand the attacks of the other 5. Individually, everyone in Sakura Stream might have great abilities, and any one of them was much more powerful than Shui Yaoyao, but they were too scattered. 5 people attacked the city together. How could Yamaguchi resist? Especially when Chinamo changed his previous attacking style. After seeing Yamaguchi, he didn't even hesitate. First he stunned him and then he made a big move. Then he retreated and unleashed another long-range critical strike. His hand speed was so fast that it was almost beautiful. Apart from the silver light flashing again, the only thing that could be seen was a brief pause before he raised his sword and advanced again. Chinamo gave an order to Jianghu, who was standing beside him. "Stop them." "Yes." Jianghu didn't waste time. He risked losing HP and rushed in for a critical strike. As Yamaguchi fell, Shui Yaoyao sent out a healing skill, and all the Supreme Alliance members were instantly full of HP. The 5 of them unleashed their ultimate moves in succession, directly destroying the enemy city. Go. The silver letters that symbolized victory filled the entire screen. Shuji didn't even have the chance to revive. He could only watch helplessly. Yamaguchi's right hand seemed to be shocked. He originally thought that he could at least hold on until all his teammates were resurrected. However, what he didn't expect was, compared to the greenhorn Chinamo of the past, the current Chinamo was frighteningly strong. How did he do it? How did he calculate so accurately? The audience of Sakura Stream School fell into complete silence this time. They had never expected such an ending. Sakura Stream was one of the top 4 teams in the country. How could they be beaten by a small Chinese team to the point where they were powerless to retaliate? But reality was right in front of him. They had no choice but to believe it. At the same time, the most valuable member of the team appeared on the screen, Qin Mo. At this moment, some people were unconvinced. Even if the Wuxia team wins, shouldn't the MVP award be given to Shuji? He got 2 double kills. Even the captain of Supreme Alliance didn't kill many people. What right does he have to be the MVP? However, in the next second, these people automatically fell silent. This was because the opponent's battle record had also appeared on the screen. Chapter 356. 10 assists. When did this happen? Why didn't they notice it? And the whole Sakura Stream team only died 12 times in total. That was to say, 10 of them were related to Qin Mo? Is the data wrong? Some people didn't believe it at all. But one of the processes of the esports competition was that the most valuable players' fighting scene would be shown separately. People didn't know what was going on until Qin Mo's actions were enlarged on the screen. They didn't realize it until they saw it. At the beginning, half of the reason why Tiger Cloud could kill so quickly was because Qin Mo had stunned the opponent from behind, which fixed the members of Sakura Stream squad on this side. Not to mention that Shui Yaoyao's first kill was also because of Qin Mo. People didn't see it before because Qin Mo's speed was too fast. Now, after being replayed, people realized how beautiful Qin Mo's operation was and how fast his hand speed was. Under the dazzling silver screen, technical movement, and every attack had a purpose. How well did he know each skill to be able to do this? The Supreme Alliance's captain, who they had been yelling about, only knew how to run away, had done so many things without them knowing. Another surprising thing was that he didn't die at all. And he never went back to the city. He only relied on the health bags along the way and Shui Yaoyao's healing to KO the whole team. The most valuable player that couldn't be refuted. Seeing such a result, everyone shut up. The expressions of the fans who originally wanted to argue were obviously frozen. Shuji lowered his head, clenched his hands, and pressed his thin lips into a line. But now he didn't have the right to be angry. The obvious gap was there. He did kill 4 times, but he didn't have a single assist. But what about the opponent? 10 times. Shuji had thought that the teenager was the best in the Supreme Alliance. Now it didn't seem so. That man didn't talk much from beginning to end. He just stood there with a handsome and noble side profile. He thought he was just a soft-footed shrimp. He didn't even care about the captain's warning and just rushed forward. But Shuji's chest had never been so depressed. If he could do it again, he would never be like this. What he regretted the most was underestimating the man named Qin Mo. The 2 reporters were speechless. Amidst the great silence, the members of Supreme Alliance took off their headphones and stood up. Perhaps it was because they were wearing the same uniform. He always gave people the feeling that he could sweep away an army of 1,000. When Qin Mo was walking back, Wuxia was already standing there. Her left hand was in her pocket, and her right arm was raised high. She was smiling. Qin Mo extended his hand as well. There was a clap. The 2 of them clapped handsomely. Such a scene would only make one's blood boil. Those who saw it would never be able to feel that kind of shock as those who experienced it personally. Shui Yaoyao's palms were still sweating. A lot of people said that Almighty Qin's mechanics were amazing, but she didn't feel much about it. After all, she was a girl and couldn't understand it. Even when she played games in the past, she only felt that Almighty Qin's mechanics were amazing. But now her heart was beating. He couldn't suppress his throbbing for a long time. Everything stemmed from personal experience. Almighty Qin's every assist, every move, every defense, and every kill. Only she could see it clearly. So much so that after the game was over, her fingers were trembling. Not because of timidity, not because of her previous inferiority complex. But she had a firm belief. She wanted to stay in the Supreme Alliance, even if many people didn't think highly of this industry. Even if she would suffer all kinds of ridicule, she still wanted to stay. Even if she failed one day, she wouldn't regret having such a reckless youth. Compared with the solemn atmosphere of the Supreme Alliance, the atmosphere of Sakura Stream Team was too stiff. The agent probably hadn't come back to his senses yet. In his mind, this was just a small game and he could easily beat the opponent. But the result? If this kind of thing got out, he didn't know how much face he would lose. The agent got angry. He walked in front of Yamaguchi and growled, "How on earth did you become the captain?" Or are you too old and your hand speed can't keep up? If you can't be the captain, let Shuji be. Look at your own record, have you ever killed a person? Yamaguchi didn't speak, but his face was too silent. When his hair fell down, no one could see his expression clearly. Fujio listened to the admonishment and subconsciously raised her eyebrows. Because it was too quiet around them, every word that the agent said was clearly heard by everyone. Feng Yi, who was also the agent, glanced over here. You can't even beat a small team. Yamaguchi, I am now officially informing you that you are not suitable to be the captain of Sakura Stream Team. I will report this to the club. If you insist on this, then I have to ask the manager to come forward and directly kick you out of Sakura Stream Team. This is also for the development of the team. After all, you are too old to play anymore. Yamaguchi didn't want to give up. I have already said that Shuji should be the captain, but you said that now is not the right time. Look at the final result, you can't even beat a small team. Hearing that, Yin Weiyao only felt that it was very familiar. Once upon a time he was also treated like this. You are so old, why are you still playing esports? Look at yourself, can you still make money? He thought he had forgotten all about it. In fact, the pain hidden in the bottom of his heart would all come out as long as he mentioned it. Why couldn't he play esports when he was old? There were many reasons for losing a game. Shouldn't he think about how to become stronger? Yin Weiyao didn't dare to look back. He was afraid that if he looked back he would see his past self. He understood something that no one else could understand. Yamaguchi, the player he respected very much, couldn't escape the fate of being abandoned like this, and he couldn't do anything about it. However, at this time, two voices rang in his ears at the same time. One was cold and indifferent and the other was smiling evilly. Are you sure he is the reason for losing? It was the captain and the captain. Yin Weiyao jerked his head up and looked in their direction. Chapter 357. Fujio put her arm on Chinmo's shoulder and said with a smile in her voice, since Sakura Stream Team doesn't want their main force, Brother Imo, how about we poach him? Chin-Imo said faintly and looked at the agent. How much is the price? Yamaguchi is a heavyweight player, so it shouldn't be low. You can ask for anything. If you can invite him, the Supreme Alliance will be very happy. This is directly talking about money? The agent really couldn't see how worthy Yamaguchi was to be poached. He opened his mouth wide and was stunned there. Yamaguchi was the most shocked. He raised his head and looked at his former opponent, and his eyes shook violently. It was not that he wasn't disappointed. In front of so many people. When the agent accused him, he had thought that the players he had coached would speak for him. But there was no one. The feeling of being abandoned was so obvious that he didn't even want to say a word. He could only say that the times were different. He still remembered when they used to compete, that group of old friends would look for reasons after they lost, and they would eat sushi and drink sake when they found the reason. But his old friends all left and he didn't want to leave. He thought he could still play and he wanted to stay because he liked this industry. It turned out that he was still too naive. Just when he thought he was going to be crushed by this sense of powerlessness. He didn't expect that the people who stood up for him were his opponent Chin-Imo and the silver-haired teenager who Shuji said he would teach a lesson. Enough. That was enough. Yamaguchi stood up, as if a heavy responsibility had been removed from his body. Sorry, I refuse. I still want to have another fight with the Supreme Alliance, a serious fight. However, I will not stay in Sakura Stream Team. I will go to a better team so that I can be worthy of you. When he said this, his eyes were bright. The more he respected his opponent, the more his attitude was like this. Chin-Imo glanced at him and said only 4 words in a flat voice, I'll wait for you. Then he wanted to turn around. As for the reaction of the agent and players of Sakura Stream Team, he didn't care at all. Fujio was still laughing. She said softly, if it weren't for Captain Yamaguchi, my brother Imo would have killed all of you in seconds. Bro, before you teach people a lesson, look at the results. Did you see the assists? Also, Captain Yamaguchi destroyed 2 of our defense towers on the way. If it wasn't for the fact that we had to return to defend against your men, our last defense tower would have been taken down by him. If you don't know anything, ask more. Don't make yourself look so ignorant. If Fujio didn't say it, Sakura Stream fans wouldn't know what was going on. Now that he heard the reason, he understood everything. There were quite a few old fans among them and they immediately stood up. His eyes looked at Yamaguchi. Lord Yamaguchi, will go wherever you go. It wasn't much, but it was enough to shake people's hearts. It was not only Yamaguchi who felt touched but also Yin Wuxiao. The reason why they were able to persevere until now was because of God. Apart from the fact that it was their dream, it was also because the people who supported them were still around. Although there was only a little bit of light. However, as long as these people were still around, they had the motivation to continue forward. And on Sakura Stream's side. Chapter 358. That agent didn't expect this situation. He said those words just to let Yamaguchi know his position, but now, looking at those condemnations from all directions, especially when there were reporters standing in front of them, as if they wanted to write this scene into the news, he only felt that the sweat on his forehead was about to come out, and then he said softly, "Yamaguchi, I don't mean that. It's just that the result this time is not good. Don't talk about leaving so easily. Your contract is still there and it's not good for anyone." Obviously, the agent was telling Yamaguchi not to make trouble. But this time Yamaguchi, who had always been patient, couldn't bear it anymore. "I will pay the liquidated damages, and from now on, I will have nothing to do with Sakura Stream Club." Fujio heard that and looked at Yamaguchi seriously. "Captain Yamaguchi, let my brother Imo pay. It doesn't matter if you don't join the Supreme Alliance. Our family is also a club. Within a year we have sent countless esports elites to China, such as me. So you can consider joining me, and the treatment is..." Yamaguchi looked at the youngster. Before he finished his words, he was dragged away by Chin Imo by the back of his collar. That indifferent and noble voice could be heard faintly. "Countless esports elites? Such as you? Oh, besides you, who else is trained by the He clan? Yao Yao, Baby Feng, Uncle Ian, Brother Imo, you can't not see them." Fujio was dragged like that, still trying to move Yamaguchi. "Captain Yamaguchi, you also saw that among the players who just played, there was our He clan army. I welcome you here at any time." Yamaguchi. "I always feel that the youngster is not looking for people to join but more like promoting a product." After listening to Fujio, he went straight to the point. "Two are self-taught and one is a top-notch player. He just joined the He clan the day before the game. Have you trained him before?" Fujio felt that the Almighty was tearing down her stage and not cooperating with her at all, which was really not good. So she hooked up her lips and smiled. "Even if it's only me, it's worth countless people." Little Fujio. Chin Imo let go of his hand and stopped. Fujio finally saved her collar. She tidied it up and didn't even look up. "Brother Imo, is that your nickname for me?" Hearing this, Chin Imo turned his head, his left hand empty, and he gently patted the youngster's face. "If you don't shut up, I'm going to be even more intimate with you." He was threatening her again. Fujio felt that she couldn't live with this anymore. She was just about to go over and flirt with him. But she couldn't resist his next sentence. "Your eyes are still a little red, where are the eye drops?" "It's in my pocket." Fujio felt that she was being too obedient. Perhaps it was because he was rarely taken care of. Once he had a taste of it, he felt that he could calm down. Yin Wuxiao stood at the side, his eyes unmoving. After noticing that Uncle Ian was looking at her, Fujio tilted her head and smiled, as if she didn't need to say anything. Yin Wuxiao paused for a moment, then laughed along with them. A large part of the reason why the captain stood out this time was that the current Yamaguchi was very similar to him in the past. "I don't remember who said that if you are injured, don't give up. Let those injuries become your armor in battle." Chapter 359. It wasn't that he didn't envy them. But he knew that his position wasn't there. Yamaguchi looked at the way Supreme Alliance got along with each other from afar. His eyes were full of light. He took off his Sakura Stream jacket and walked away. The reporters were still holding their cameras to record this scene. Sakura Stream would be discredited this time. After the photos were posted on the internet, it attracted a lot of domestic teams to watch. After all, it was different from Tokyo. Even if Supreme Alliance didn't enter the national top 4, everyone knew their strength. Although this ability is strong, it is not as good as Xiangnan. This was a very pertinent comment given by a retired esports player. No one from Xiangnan responded. But some other team members expressed their agreement. Because on the next day, another video appeared on the internet. It was the friendly match between Xiangnan and Sakura Stream. It was the same 5v5, but Xiangnan only had 2 deaths, while the other side had 13 deaths. The numbers were enough to prove how strong the Xiangnan team was. In contrast, Supreme Alliance's result was not so beautiful. There is a gap when there is a comparison. Supreme Alliance is still a little bit worse. Take the number of kills, Xiao Taiying 7 kills and 10 assists, while Almighty Qin 3 kills and 10 assists. It seems that the hand injury has a certain impact on Almighty Qin's performance. Such a result is not so good for ordinary people in the national competition, but for Almighty Qin. It seems that this year's national champion will be given to Xiangnan again. Based on the current situation, that's right. There would be some people who made comments on the internet to make advance announcements, which were usually based on data analysis. But they forgot one thing: when Supreme Alliance was fighting against Sakura Stream, Spade Z didn't appear, and the opponent's strong player, Yamaguchi, was still there. When Xiangnan was fighting against Sakura Stream, Yamaguchi had already announced his withdrawal from the club. But it was also a good thing that the opponent didn't send the strongest lineup. But it was not certain who would win in the national competition. Because Shui Yaoyao always believed that the young man sitting in front of her was the biggest key to whether Supreme Alliance could win the national competition. When the plane took off, the blue sky of Tokyo was left behind. They returned with honor. This was an experience that Shui Yaoyao had never experienced before. Fujio was still next to Qin Imo. Fujio hadn't realized that the Almighty was a kind-hearted man before, but ever since her eyes got inflamed, the Almighty had become much gentler to her. Although he would still occasionally be mean with his words, at least he wouldn't mock her intelligence. The way the two of them interacted with each other made Coco a little surprised. After all, at the beginning when Captain chased after Spade Z, he really wanted to kill him. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Coco tilted his head and glanced at his captain, who was applying eye drops to Fujio's handsome face. He still felt that this world was a bit too fantastical. Usually, when two people with the same distinct personality and different personality, there would usually be conflicts. So, it was because heroes cherished heroes. After Coco gave himself a convincing excuse, he turned his head away. He was afraid that if he saw too much, he would overthink things. It was all the fault of those CP jokes on Weibo that were too realistic. She always gave him a sense of immersion. Chapter 360. The two of them didn't feel anything. It was just their personalities. Being with the right person, anything was easy, so they didn't feel like they were showing off their love. Fujio closed one eye, trying to avoid the stinging pain. Qin Imo casually turned the young man's face over. "Don't hide." Fujio swore that this was the best time she had ever been urged when her eyes were inflamed. In fact, it was true. The redness in her left eye had disappeared, and only the corner of her eye was a little itchy. If it weren't for the eye drops, she wouldn't have felt the inflammation. Fujio looked very obedient after applying the medicine. After all, her looks and hair color were there. Lin Feng looked back and touched his chin. "Did you notice that little Spade's skin is very good? It's different from ours. It looks very delicate up close." As he said this, Lin Feng wanted to poke Fujio's face. But before his fingertips could touch the young man, he was fixed on the spot by an indifferent gaze. That gaze was very oppressive. Lin Feng froze. He didn't offend the captain, did he? Why was the captain looking at him like that? Yunhu was smarter. He reached out and pulled Lin Feng's wrist back. "Don't you want to drink your Coke?" "Drink." Lin Feng drank his Coke while looking at Fujio, who had her eyes closed. Still too tender, even more tender than a girl. Hearing this, Shui Yaoyao raised her head abruptly. Fujio closed her eyes and laughed evilly. "Don't worry, Almighty Lin. As the beauty of the team, you are also very tender." That elongated "oh" made everyone in the team burst into laughter. "Yeah, Lin Feng, you are still talking about little Spade. Look at yourself. You are so beautiful. Didn't the talent in your department write you a love letter? Take it out and have a look." *CK off. "That cataract, I don't look like a girl at all, damn it." Fujio interrupted. "You look like a girl everywhere." Lin Feng. "Captain, control little Spade." Qin Imo glanced at him and said indifferently, "I don't care." Lin Feng was dumbfounded. Fujio smiled happily. Lin Feng decisively turned his head away. He couldn't PK in real life, so he would have to rely on external forces in the future. Fujio was originally quite obedient, but after being provoked by Lin Feng, she was more or less energized. She wanted to open her eyes and say something. Qin Imo tilted his head when he saw the movement beside him. He reached out and put the youngster's hat on, his voice deep and pleasant. "You want to mess around again, MMH?" Fu Jiu leaned back with the corners of her mouth curling up slightly. She looked like she was very obedient. Shui Yaoyao let out a sigh of relief. She was afraid that the topic would continue. His Highness Jiu's skin was really too good. Fortunately, there were quite a few boys like this in the school. After all, there were more gays now, and many guys had started to apply skincare products. But there was no one as handsome as Highness Jiu. They were all very feminine. Highness Jiu, on the other hand, was very handsome, especially when she had seen Highness Jiu fight with others. That kind of ruthlessness could more or less reduce people's suspicions of Highness Jiu. However, how long could this peace last? After returning to River Town, they would begin the National League. This meant that he would have to go to another city to participate in the regional competition in the 3 northeastern provinces. At that time he would not be able to avoid staying in the same room as others. The others were fine, but if it was Almighty Qin. Chapter 361. Back in Jianghu City. Fu Jiu had just woken up, and her silver hair was still sticking up. Her left hand was subconsciously rubbing the corner of her eye, and a pure black school bag was hanging on her right shoulder. That lazy, beautiful young man attracted a lot of cheers as soon as he appeared. There he is. *CK, it's really my big spade. Looks like the news is right. If you want to take a photo, hurry up. Where's Almighty Qin? I want to take a photo of Almighty Qin. I want to take a photo of both of them. It was different from the silence when Supreme Alliance left. This time it seemed like someone had gotten the news that they were going back to China. Many fans had been waiting at the airport since morning. Anyway, there were only 3 flights from Tokyo, so they would be able to make it. Finally, their hard work paid off. As soon as Fu Jiu came out, their eyes lit up, not to mention the dozens of people in the same uniform lined up behind her. What a feeling. The girls were very excited, and in an instant, a group of people rushed over. Fu Jiu paused and turned back to look at Qin. What was going on? It was this kind of slow reaction right after waking up that made people's blood boil. Looking at the Almighty when there's a problem, I give full marks for that look. Is my spade still in a daze? Look at his blank face, ha. What do you know? He's always like this. Hearing people talking about her in such a way, Fu Jiu curled up her lips slightly. She opened her long legs and walked over to those dozens of girls. She was both seductive and cool. Oh, too aggressive. That tone, it was incomparable. Should be good, be quiet, or you'll disturb others. Let me tell you something in secret. Since the Almighty hasn't come, you can say that the Almighty is a he, and I'll give you sweets, Fu Jiu said as she looked back, still smiling. Those dozens of girls had never seen the young man so closely before. Previously they had only seen him in pictures on the internet. Even in game videos they only showed the game scenes. Spade Z was really handsome and gentle in this way. What should I do with the feeling of being electrocuted? Their hearts were beating so fast. But for them to say that the Almighty was a slave, they really couldn't do it. Just as the girls were in a dilemma, Qin walked over. Without a word, he dragged Fu Jiu behind him like he was dragging a sack. Then he looked sideways at Feng Yi and said, I'll leave this to you. Don't worry. Feng Yi's ability to socialize is showing. But this time it was easier to settle. It was all because of the young man's performance. It was obvious that these girls were still intoxicated. When the aunties at the airport saw this scene, they thought that some fans were picking up celebrities. But what was praiseworthy was that these fans were not like what they had seen before. They were either very noisy, or they were so excited that they almost fainted, making it inconvenient for others, and they even had to dispatch security guards to maintain order. Not bad. The aunties thought that Fu Jiu was the obvious one, and they glanced at the youngster. He even felt that when he had nothing to do, he could go home and do some research and watch the TV series that this young man had acted in. It was a beautiful misunderstanding. An ordinary girl like Shui Yaoyao would never have imagined such a scene. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.